paddling in the pool of water at the other boats. You must always just look at the space in front of you. That's Kisley laying down the law. Here comes Cover. It's Cover, he's taking Campos on. Stroke by stroke, he's going past him. And he's gone past him like he's standing still.
What a race! What a race!
God, be calm, Gengen. Be calm, be calm, be calm. The Hungarians are away.
South Africans are
South
away,
Africa
side
are
by
away.
side by
But it's
side.
Hungary. Hungary take the initiative. Just a mass of quality paddlers. You see collision in the background.
World champ.
Look
Anna
at that.
from
That's going to
Czech
be
Republic.
That's going to be tears. It's going to be laughing. She can't believe it.
She's so happy.
Looks at the back of the ball, salty, and that was clean. That's perfect.
It is McGregor! It is McGregor! No one has given up. Portage is hanging on. Alonso is hanging on. Gold medalist Hank McGregor, South Africa!
Well, a warm good morning from Camps Drift in Pietermaritzburg for the final day's racing in the 2017 ICF Canoe Marathon World Championships. Another beautiful spring day in the center of Pietermaritzburg, which is in the heart of the province of KwaZulu-Natal, on the eastern side of South Africa. And after 3 days of fantastic racing, so much more to look forward to. The officials are heading out to their positions at the start pontoons, the turn cans. That's Hugh Raw taking them upriver at the moment. And everything is in place for a day that is going to be dominated by doubles racing. In a few moments' time, it's the women's K2 and the men's C2. It's a pleasure to be able to introduce myself to you as Dave McLeod, joined in the commentary team today by Ivan Lawler, Doug Bird down on the ground, and Ant Stott. So we are riddled with former world champions and looking forward to bringing the action to you today. A beautiful day. It's already 22 degrees in downtown Pietermaritzburg, and the temperature threatening to go into the mid-30s today. So a warm good morning. It's a pleasure to be able to welcome you. And once again, remember, you can join us on the live stream, and we welcome those comments throughout. As I said, we're in the center of the province of KwaZulu-Natal. It's the kingdom of the Zulu, and there's been a distinct Zulu flavor throughout this, from the opening ceremony to the hysteria in the crowds on the opposite bank yesterday when Hank McGregor won that gold medal for the 7th time. And I'm sure you'll see more of that all the way through to the departure from the various airports tomorrow and later during the week. This is the province of KwaZulu-Natal. If you head 90 kilometers down the road, and there are plenty of sporting journeys that will take you down that road, you'll visit the city of Durban, which is the beating heart of the province of KwaZulu-Natal and home to its fabled Golden Mile.
A trip to South Africa would simply not be complete without a trip to one of the many iconic game reserves in the province. Within a few hours of the center of Pietermaritzburg are dozens of superb safari destinations where you can enjoy the magnificent wildlife, including the Big Five, up close and personal, the ultimate memory to take home with you. Combine your sporting passions with the unique appeal of this special corner of Africa. Plan to spend time in the thriving coastal hub of Durban, a popular tourist destination where the beaches of the Golden Mile and the year-round warm weather make it a holiday mecca. You can surf, scuba dive, stand-up paddleboard, paddle a surf ski the entire length of the Golden Mile, with many deep-sea charters leaving from Durban Harbour. Ushaka Marine World combines thrilling rides with a world-class aquarium at the southern end of the Golden Mile, a mile that includes the Suncoast Casino and the iconic Moses Mabhida Stadium.
And many of the visitors to the competition this year have had the opportunity to savour some of those local delights. The spotlight's going to fall now on two races, the K2 women who are already on the water, the girls from Epworth School who've done a fantastic job in operating the start pontoon and bringing their trademark atmosphere and geest to this event. Shortly after the K2 women are underway, it's the C2 men, and all that is going to be played out on this stretch of water. This is Camps Drift. It was designed and built here in 1982, and it's built on the Umsunduzi River. Down on the bottom right, you'll see the NCC Clubhouse. It stands for the Natal Canoe Club, one of the oldest clubs around here, and the start pontoon immediately below the clubhouse. This is the format we're going to be racing in today. It's been exactly the same. It's a 3.4 kilometer lap in total. We're racing on the Umsunduzi River, or the Duzi as it's abbreviated, for the famous annual Duzi Canoe Marathon. You head up to the top silt weir. It's a paddle of 1.3 kilometers. You turn around and you paddle back down river. The first lap is a full unbroken lap under the bridge, which takes you under Camps Drift Drive, a gradual left bend to the bottom turn can. The first lap is a complete one. There's no portage. But from the second lap onward and every subsequent lap, the paddlers will, at the end of each lap, come into the portage. It's a jetty-style takeout, a jetty that leads to a small grass embankment and then a natural grass portage. It's a portage of about 100 meters. You then descend by a short bank down to the river, another jetty put in. And on the final lap, after that final put in, you then head upriver to a set of 5 turn cans that demarcates the short turn. It's 500 meters up, 500 meters back, the finish line in front of you, and that is where the champions are decided. So Camps Drift, it's a, well, it says a 3.6 kilometer course there. We now know from the GPS that it's actually 3.4. And the paddlers on the water at the moment are racing 26.2 kilometers, which is going to be 7 laps made up of 6 portages. Joined in the commentary box now by Ann Stott and Ivan Lawler, and we're just running a rule over the start list for these 2 races here, and we're expecting another belter of a race. And unusually, they're not all stacked in the middle, because the real threat, Ivan, is not on screen there. It's right in the outside lane, but there's plenty of quality on that screen right now.
At the bottom of that, you've got 9, Belcher, Mason. We saw Belcher yesterday, properly impressive.
And she's still buzzing.
But above them, Brooks and Peters, they were 4th last year and would have been stronger, I think. They had a few portage problems last year. They did a lot of catching up, and they've been very strong in the sprint season this year. Up at the top of the screen, you got Ward and Russell. Ward, obviously, 2nd place last year, different partner, Kaita Purchase last year. Obviously, a change there. You'll probably know more about that than I will. But here at the bottom, Che and Barra, world champion. Kisley and Mihalik. Kisley 2nd yesterday. Mihalik 1st in the under-23s. Mihalik 2nd last year at the World Championships. 3rd, rather, last year at the World Championships with another partner. You can never write the Hungarians off.
And there's Kazishkova in lane 11.
Lane and Broughton. Ray and Hogan, bit of local interest there as well. Ray, obviously from South Africa originally. She's gone out to America to be their high-performance coach out there. Hogan was her athlete that she took to the Olympic Games in Rio, and those 2 have teamed up as well. Kazishkova back in action again. Tough day for her yesterday. She had a go at me this morning when I went over to the Athletes Village for criticising her portaging yesterday. And she said she just had a boat full of water for the whole time and couldn't ever find the time to empty it out. And with the slopes, the water was always running down the back or the front of the boat, and she was just struggling. So she gave me a bit of a slap wrist this morning for critical comments yesterday, but hey, that's our job.
Now, you do tend to come into the venue here with a paper bag over your head to avoid being picked on, don't you?
Well, that's part of the deal, isn't it? Here's the C2 men and all the quality stacked in lanes 1 to 4, to be honest. A little bit lower down, Bourgil and Gluza, possible, but not probable. Really, we got top of your screen there, Ferro and Grana, Kosar and Dory, Covidoce. They're your world champions at the moment. But Campos Sanchez, European champions earlier this year. But to be fair, the Spanish have underperformed all weekend.
This is the last chance really to redeem themselves. They have underdelivered. I think they know that. They would have gone to bed last night knowing that there's a chance to actually make up for all of that today.
They've got a huge K2 coming this afternoon as well. And to me, that's a really exciting K2. They were impressive at the Europeans. But yeah, the Spanish have to go home from here and start thinking, you know what, we've got ourselves a bit of a problem. They've been dominating for a long time. They're second to the Hungarians probably. I think they're the last team to actually beat the Hungarians in the medal table at an event. And here they really haven't shone at all. The girls were good yesterday.
Mark, for some reason your voice is very soft this morning on my side.
So maybe they can pull something in the K2 as well. But this K2 race is
sorry, it's Ryan
today.
It's always interesting to have a look at that medal table.
Yeah, much better, thanks.
Hungary are running away from it. They've been fantastic. They always travel well. They've been brilliant.
Sorry, with the cars on the
classes.
bridge, it's hard to hear sometimes.
South Africa, as the hosts, have had a good event. They've really sort of
much
drawn
better.
on that hometown support. But it's good to see the other goals getting on there. Ukraine getting in there. GB getting that gold medal. We've had a solid performance. The Irish were celebrating Jen Egan's performance. So there've been some nations that have really put their hands up, and there seems to be a small shift in the landscape, which is what you want, isn't it?
It is, and it's great to see the emotional ups and downs. You know, for me, yes, I had a personal interest in the women's K1 anyway, so maybe it was heightened for me there. But I was invited out for dinner with the Irish last night, and you sit at their table and you see what it means, not to Jenny, but to the whole group. And it's huge, you know. Jenny's been around for quite a long time now, just pecking around the edge of a proper world-class result, and finally is there. And you saw it 2 years ago with Anna Koziskova. She won her world championships, and from that point, you know what, it doesn't really matter what happens. You've drawn your line, and you can leave the sport comfortable. So it's great watching what happens here.
Yeah, and it's those are the special moments. But I saw Ukrainian tears being shed on the podium. Those are the moments for me which actually define an event like this. And Stott, he's now finished his cornflakes and his coffee in the morning. Emotional highs for you over the first 3 days?
Yeah, I think just watching the level of the racing and the excitement mount as the races progress, right down from the junior racing right up to the seniors, and the energy and the hype of each race. Just building, and the excitement. I think at the end of yesterday, I think every single person watching the racing was absolutely exhausted. And today is going to be the same as we jump into the K2s. The pace is going to go up a notch. The excitement's going to go up another notch. So yeah, it's amazing to watch these caliber of athletes racing at Arts, and these are the best athletes in the world right here, and we get to watch them live.
So the girls from Norway, the first to come into the start pontoon. And you saw a few moments ago people already starting to sort of stake their claim to the piece of ground on the opposite bank, because the grandstands here on the clubhouse side of Camps Drift already packed. The beautiful balmy spring morning, so conditions are absolutely ideal this morning. There we go, the first of the South African crews. Mish Byrne looking very excited with Hayley Arthur. Two good mates. Put them in a surf ski, they're at their absolute happiest. Mish Byrne, I think, soaking up every moment of this occasion. Saw her coming in from her run earlier this morning just to try and get the heart rate up and getting the system all relaxed. Really in a very good place and looking forward to the opportunity.
That's Brooks and Peters side on to us there in the red, gold and black colours of Belgium. They're going to be a real contender, especially, you can guarantee they'll be there for the first couple of laps at least, unless their portaging goes wrong. And yeah, I think they're in with a serious shout.
And the margins will be closer today. The pace will be hotter. We're expecting it to be as we enjoyed yesterday, but it could be tighter the whole way.
The Hungarians have got something to prove here today, though. They took a kicking yesterday as a team in this race. Renata Che there and I've forgotten Che and Barra there. They like to paddle away from the field, and they like to be out in front. And if they can take their teammates with them for a few laps, all the better. But I know from a British point of view, when Che makes her move, you have to cover that move. Every move she makes has to be covered seriously, because if she's up and away, she is gone.
Jenna Warden shot a few moments ago. Second step of the podium last year in that sensational race with Kate Purchase. Got a new partner in the back of the boat. Really good mate of hers in Nikki Russell.
So you're looking to the left of your picture, to the right of your picture rather, the two white boats of Hungary. Quite how a random draw does that, I'm not sure, but these things happen. Italians there, Spain you can see in the yellow tops. South Africa and Australia closest to you. Jenna Ward in the front of the black boat there. They need to be pulled back just a little.
And off they go.
Away they go. And there's all sorts
Oh,
of
and there's
trouble.
3 being held. That's going to have to be a false start,
That's
surely.
coming back. The 2
They've all got to come back.
Hungarians, they need to stop. The Spaniards still haven't worked it out that it's stopped.
That couldn't have been a mass false start.
The Australians really very slow. But obviously on the far side, they knew, because the 3 crews on the far right went nowhere. And it's a little bit stressful going 100 metres like that. With
and those are our ace crews. Those are the ones who are watching us, Kisley and Mihalak and Cheyenne Burrow.
Yeah, it's very hard to work out what happened there. You saw, there's...
well, there's some good
you
humour.
saw they weren't on the line, essentially, to start with. So the go should never have happened. Now, the first full start we had in the juniors earlier in the weekend was someone in the crowd said go.
Go Jen, they said, and
right.
They took off.
Yeah, so maybe it was as simple as that, because it's definitely the people this side were more excitable than the ones on the other side.
Well, I'm hearing the official saying there was a malfunction on the start line, so back they come. It's always fun to run an eye over the craft that are on the water at this stage when you can compare them all and see how they've been set up and which boats are fitted with handles, and we'll chat about it as they go through to the Portage and see how they work.
Always nerve-wracking to have a false start in any race, but one thing it does do, it actually kind of settles the nerves a little bit, because now you've done your first start, you know how the body feels, you know how the boat goes off the line, so it can help a bit. But yeah, the girls have got to get composed again, get back on that start line, and just be composed and wait for the starter's orders and get ready to smash it off the line one more time.
You hope it works out this time. I remember one of the 10Ks we did at World Championships back in the old days. We had 7 full starts, and the 6th one of those, the guys went 500 metres before the motorboats could catch them up and stop them. I stayed on the line for that last one, and I was sweating buckets thinking, please, please, please stop this, because I'm so far behind now. But they're back on the line again now. So on the far right, the 2 white boats of Hungary, closest to us. The Australians, then Jenna Ward, still reluctant. Maybe their boat's just longer than everyone else's. Ashley Overstone, that's a very good point.
Michelle and Margaret Hogan,
all
the last,
the way
and
cleanly this time.
That's far more like it.
Blue boat in the middle, Belcher and Mason. White boats on the right, the 2 Hungarians. Brooks and Peters in the white boat in the centre. They're fastest away, as we thought they might be. And Spain this side, which is Alvarez and Arquero. But it's Hungary, Great Britain, Belgium.
Super start for
Spain.
Belgium. And a terrible start for the South Africans. Oh, I lied. That's the Australian crew of Montana Murray.
So there's a bit of a coming together. Che at the front, and Kisley, a little bit of change of direction. I think it was Kaziskova who tapped the back of Kisley's boat there. But Brooks and Peters showing their form. They won the B final at the Sprint Worlds, 500 metres just a couple of weeks ago. And they are a very, very well-drilled crew. It's just whether they can cope with the rough and tumble of a marathon. They were impressive last year. So there you go. It's Belgium, Great Britain, Spain to the left. That Spanish crew is going to be Barrios and Figueras. Then Kisley and the white boat, second out from the leaders. Che for now tucked in the back, as she was in the K1 race yesterday. And as state normal for Kaziskova, she's just trying to catch up the front group again, which I'm sure she will do. And it's going to be a big, big group around the top turn.
Those boats coming in from the right, it's not a tactic. They have to go around a bridge pillar as they go under Camps Drift Drive, so they all went right of that big bridge pillar. That's why they're all converging in on the front, but that's all been done safely. The Aussies scratching to get back onto the bunch, but it's a big bunch consolidating as they head up to the top 10.
They're all going to make it in at the back. They'll all close in. The Australians, Leverett, who by this time yesterday in the K1 had already taken a swim. She's just about making contact with the back of that group. That's them in the yellow shirts, the next boat to make contact. The Americans in the yellow boat, I think, tracking the Italians. And here's the big guns in the men's C2. Martin Cover there, his partner Adam Doce. They both raced yesterday.
Gee, I don't know whether you get opportunities to actually put a bet on who's going to win or finish in places here if there's formalized betting and canoeing races, but it'd be crazy not to put your money anywhere else.
I'm sure there's a lot of informal betting goes on, even if there's not formal betting. The girls K2, looking good. Organised, no stress for anyone there really. Except perhaps the Italians, the Americans, and the Norwegians with the 3 boats just trailing off the pack. So closest to us, Ferro and Grana, world champions many times, as are the yellow boat just above them, Cova and Doce. Kosar and Dory coming in. We've seen Dory race earlier this weekend and rip into the under-23 men's C1. He's world champion there already. And just struggling to line up.
Campos and Sanchez coming down to the line. All under starters' orders.
Spaniards struggling to settle. They won't start it like that. They're calling 5:01 back.
And that's Ferro and Grana.
Strangely nervous
Off
for
they
such
go.
an
It looks
experienced
a good
crew.
clean start.
And away they go. Silva and Maciel second from the right, leading. Oh no, it's not, it's Ukraine. It seems like the Portuguese aren't actually out. Oh, they're on the far side in the green boat. So there's a few people not out there today by the look of it.
Campos and Sanchez in the boat at the front. Blue and red.
Kova and Doce struggling with the steering at the moment, and the Ukraine crew of Levchenko and Shapoval also making ground there. Closest to us, Ferrat and Grano are also going to be there if they can cut out Kosar and Dory from the wash that they're currently occupying.
Good news if you're a Spanish supporter. Spain 1 and 2.
Closest to the bridge pillar there is the Ukrainian crew, and they're matching the Spaniards stroke for stroke. And here's the K2. Just at the back of that group is Lane and Broughton, almost in contact now. And that's probably the weakest part of their race over. It's the start, so they're going to maybe have more impact now they've got back in the group. But at the front, Belcher and Mason.
4 crews off the back.
Brooks and Peters to their left. That's exactly
And there's
as
the
they
pace is
started.
picking up. They're
Belcher,
heading up
Mason
to
go.
the top turn,
I
Can.
think it was Kisley that instigated that, but they were more than covered by Belcher and Mason. And I think it's going to be a case of management of excitement for Mason in the back there today. She saw her partner win yesterday, and she's vulnerable, I think, over the distance and in the rough and tumble of a K2 race. But
Belcher and
they've
Mason.
been practicing a lot. I know they've got personal bests and records back home. Kisley Mihalic taking the lead there.
Getting a nice slingshot coming out of the corner, Mihalik and Kisley. Going past Belcher and Mason.
Brooks and Peters to the left of Belcher and Mason, looking comfortable. There's Che. And in the black boat, I think, is Barrios and Figueras, but we need a number check on them. But it looks like 4 boats away at the moment, and Renata Che is nowhere near, and she's not even looking comfortable in the chase group at the minute. Guess who's going to be left to close the gap there? It's the blue shirts of Kaziskova and Hrachova from Czech Republic. Australia 6-3-5.
Yeah, not good news for Montana Murray and Bria Rodley.
I think these girls had a bit of a story coming into it. I'm pretty sure it's this crew. There were problems in their selection race with something happened at the Portage where they got trapped, their boat under a cable or something.
Yeah,
and they didn't quite make the cut-off time, and there was a big appeal. And I'm really glad to see them here because it's, you know, if you can get here, get here. And
yeah, I remember the story. There was rope on the jetty, and as they came into one of the portages, the nose of their boat got snarled up in that, and that basically blew them out of the selection race. They immediately contacted the organisers and said, "I see you using jetties. Please tell us that there's no rope anywhere."
Right.
But that was clearly designed to fuel their appeal process, which has worked because they're here.
And I think a lot of people got behind them in that campaign. I think a lot of people felt for them. And Che and Barrett in the white boat at the back of that group really struggling. And I think that was Ward and Russell as well, tracking them. But here comes Che in the white boat round the outside. It's just unfamiliar territory. It was exactly the same in the K1 for her yesterday. And yeah, I think she's just off colour. Yeah, they look so tidy normally. And you can see Barra a little bit uncomfortable in the back there in the waves. You've got the Danes just pulling out on them now.
Jenna Ward and Nikki Russell right at the back of that bunch, flailing away. They're desperately trying to work their way back into a stronger position.
It's Rosenkilde and Hansen in the beigey boat with the black ends who are pulling Che and Barra up to the front here. Brooks and Peters very happy, it seems, to sit second wash out. And Che is having to use other crews to get her back to the front of this race. Hansen will sit on the tail of Kisley there and wait for Che to come all the way around the outside. And Che will be relieved to be back in this race. Look how high their nose is out of the water. That is an uphill struggle. Now it's downhill, and finally they're in more familiar territory. Koziskova and Herchova also back. Ward and Russell closing the gap with the other South Africans.
Top turn here, Dave.
Yeah, Michelle
Arthur and Byrne.
Yep.
And here we go, Ferro and Grana in the C2, and they're being tracked by the blue boat of their compatriots, Campos and Sanchez. With them, Kolskar and Dory. Then the Czechs, Brezina. No, that's not the Czechs, sorry. That's the Ukrainians, Levchenko and Shapoval, and Kova and Doce. Also a little bit off the pace. The Poles round next, Bourgil and Gluza. Then the Czechs, Brezina and Louis. All comfortably round the turn.
Great example of how to make that turn tight in the C2.
Through come the Portuguese, Silva and Maciel, both paddling on the same side of the boat there, as are the Colombians. You should maybe get a Portugal-Colombia mix and have a left-hander and a right-hander in each boat and average out the result. See how you get on.
Been following some of the chatter online. There's a lot of excitement amongst the Colombians in the performance here, so maybe they can rack that up another level by putting in a strong performance here. And still a little perturbed to see both local boats scratching at the back there.
Yeah, still early stages of the race. The pace is settling. Hungarians looking very relaxed in the front now. Renata Kasej just looking a lot more comfortable on the first wash there, rather than scratching around at the back. I'm sure she'll start relaxing now. But yeah, South Africans are strong. They've made contact again, and I think the longer the race goes, hopefully they'll get stronger and stronger as it goes.
I think at the moment the Spaniards are in a really good position because the front four are so strong. You've got the two Hungarians, the Great Britain crew, and the Belgians, who seem to be happy not to get involved with the V-washes. And at the moment it's the Danes in the front V, but the Spaniards tracking them. And so the Danes and the Spaniards, I think, have got very protected washes there. Just there's not going to be much rotation in this group. So good news for Denmark. They haven't had the best championship so far, but maybe things are about to change.
So confirmation of the splits as they went around that top turn can. Vanda Kisley and Sarah Mihalik at the front of the bunch. And that front four. Oh, the front bunch
There's the
charging.
chase group of four
Yep.
behind that we saw. This is the lead group. Then there's one individual crew, which is the Spaniards, Alvarez and Alquero. Then there's a chase pack of four, which you can see in the distance. But nothing's going to happen back there that's going to influence the result now. The chase group of four, just for the spectators. Oh, here we go. So it's the Australians with Leverett. It's the Americans with
Ire and Hogan.
Michelle Array. Then it's Great Britain, Lane and Broughton. And at the back, Sletjo and Spickland from Norway.
So that gradual left-hand bend on the first full lap. And there's a bit of intensity as they come down to that first turn can.
It's kicking off. It's Belcher and Mason laying down the law, I think. There's a little bit of significance in this. It really doesn't matter who wins this, but there is something going on here. Che immediately round to the back of the blue boat of Great Britain, which means that that's the one that's leading. And there's first blood to the Great Britain crew, Belcher and Mason. And it's only the Danes really that are comfortable. Even the Belgians are struggling now off the back of that. And I think it's the South Africans.
Bringing up the rear. What that little burn has done is it's stretched
No,
that
it's not.
front.
It's the Spaniards, sorry. It's Figueras and Barrios are the black boat in that front six. Belcher around the turn really well. It's Che who's suffering. She's trying to stay in the V. It's going to work out okay for her. So it's Great Britain, Denmark, Hungary, Spain, Belgium, then the South Africans, Czechs, 2 South African boats there still, and the one to the left looks like a horrendous lean. You can see both paddlers' chests from the front, and that is hideous. We've all been there.
It's agonizing.
And anyone who's racing a K2 knows that feeling. And to generate enough relaxation to solve that problem when you're under pressure. And Ward and Russell, well, they stopped paddling for a bit there. I'm not sure what happened.
It's almost as if they think it's Portage time.
So
Curious split of two
See
boats
these
off the back
boats
of the
breaking
boat.
off to the left.
out to the right. Is that going to be Kaziskova again?
It could well be.
Far out
She
to
did
the
that
right. She
throughout
did
her
it-
K1
yeah,
race.
She did it all day yesterday.
She's clearly sussed out a channel there that she thinks is quicker. There
It
she
is
goes.
Kaziskova, and she's been covered by Ward. I think Ward ran for that.
Well, it's an interesting line, really, and we saw her use it time after time yesterday, and it's definitely longer. But I don't know if it's the mental thing of being close to the bank and being able to go fast, or there's deeper water there. But she's used it lap after lap yesterday, and here she is using that channel again today.
And they've pulled away from Ward and Russell. It's bad news for the South Africans. You can see that Kaziskova is rolling down those big waves out to the right. So she can make contact with the group, possibly. Belcher and Mason, very relaxed at the front. Dane's doing well also.
Belcher seems to have a very similar race plan from yesterday so far, asserting her dominance from early on. And she's proved she's strong enough to follow through with it. So, yeah, great to see her and Mason up front there again doing exactly what Belcher did yesterday.
So Kaziskova's closed the gap. And there's the Spaniards. That's the second Spanish crew. Alvarez and Arquero, they're on their own at the moment. The leaders come through. Kisley takes on the lead from Great Britain. But nothing dramatic. That group will stay together, but they're on their own. Jenna Ward and Nicole Russell. The race Jenna Ward had last year was a phenomenal race. I mean, it was something special, and it's not going to be the same for her this year. If she gets back to that group, it's going to be an awfully hard trawl.
It's also a very new combination, with the greatest of respect to the two very talented girls who are in that boat. The Jenna Ward and Kaeda Purchase thing was
He is landing and changing batteries
but
quickly.
it did look really hard. And they're good mates. They paddle out of surf ski together, but they really haven't done the hours in that K2 together. And they're still settling in it, to be honest. I mean, they're still dealing with basics like setup and lean. And
What I'm struggling to believe is that Arthur and Byrne, the other South African crew, have made it back there with the lean they've got. I mean, that is such hard work, and it's really heavy duty doing that. Kisley leads. From
C2
Belcher.
bottom turn,
No
boy.
one on Kisley's right. Renata Che, exactly as she did yesterday, not moving up to the sidewash. It's the Spaniards to her right, Barrios and Figueras, who would like her to move up. But at the front of the C2, all the main players back. Kova back in the group. We saw him. He was behind at the top turn, as he was in the C1 yesterday, and now he's made up that ground. Kova Doce in the yellow boat, Ferro Grana in the white boat, Campos Sanchez in the blue boat. And making up that group, Kolsar and Dory. Those front four are well clear of the poles. Portage and Gluza, and the Czechs just behind there, and Brezina and Delui. But way more to play for as Che moves up to the side of Kisley. In fact, she's going to take the lead. Great Britain are going to miss the V because the Belgians have already booked that. So we're going to see here, I think, if Belcher can come around Kisley, I think she'll try for it. You can see them working hard. They're about level now, and Kisley drops back, and the Belgians have to move out the way. And it's the Danes who will tuck in behind Great Britain. So that's 2 from 2, Belcher versus Kisley. And it's a lonely journey for Ward and Russell there. They should be caught, I would think, by this group, which is now 5 boats.
And that'll be good news for them, actually. Their best chances of bridging that are going to be to drop back and get caught by the bunch that's reeling them in and reeling them in quickly.
So we've got the second Spanish crew there of Alvarez, Arquero in that group, that chase pack. And closing down the gap again is Kaziskova.
With Ward and Russell shadowing them all the way as well. Back to the seaboat race, and thanks to the comments coming on the stream, very mindful of those. Thanks ADN Sport and Doug and the team. It's always tricky to keep the balance right when you're looking at the 2 races. Yeah, one thing our team does do, by the way, is to keep an eye out on development. So we watch both races simultaneously, and 3 C2s now going to the fronts. Spain, Spain, Hungary, as we called it.
So the second Hungarian crew, Kosar and Dory, just a little off the pace now. So we've got 6 portages to do today. The first one will be at the end of this next big lap.
So the pace easing back on the front bunch as they head up to the top turn can for the 2nd time in this morning's race.
So Hungary lead, Spain to their right, Great Britain to their left. Hungary tucked in the back. Then it's the Danes, then the Belgians. And Kaziskova and Herchova blown off the group by the turn of pace from Che earlier. And that has fallen well for Ward and Russell, who now have the Czech train back to the front group.
And they're actually friends. Jenna Ward and Anna Kaziskova are really good mates, so there would have been a spot of sympathy for them to try and pull them back on.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah, they dropped off together. Yeah. So, Anne Stott's just corrected our obvious mistake there. It was actually Arthur and Byrne with Kaziskova, and they both fell off the front group together when Che took the lead.
As Ward and Russell will be joining the second group, the chasing group.
A little bit of stress around the top turn for the Belgians there on the inside, and for the Danes at the back of the group. As Che takes it on. Tracked comfortably, it seems, by Belcher and Mason. Spaniards again, Barrios, so good yesterday, and Barrios Figueras looking good again today. So it's Hungary, Great Britain, Spain and Hungary. And the Belgians are gradually losing ground. In fact, it might not be gradually, it looked like it was fairly...
Both boats at the back are in trouble.
Gaps opening fairly quickly. So here's chase pack. So this is Ward and Russell. You got the second Spaniards of Alvarez and Arquero. You got Leverett and Ahrens from Australia. You got Iray and Hogan, Lane and Broughton. So that's now a 5-boat group, but it's 4 away.
And a very positive statement of intent from Cheyenne Burra.
And it looks like Belcher and Mason are keen to make this stick because they've taken on the pace. It's the Danes trying desperately to close the gap. But it's going to be a long way back if those front 4 decide to press on.
Got an interesting shot here.
So this is the chase
Cam.
back of 5, which is soon to be 6 by the look of it. Not sure who the white boat at the back is, but we'll try and add that to our commentary as soon as we find out. But there's the C1, 3 boats, Hungary and both the Spanish crews. While the women's K2 comes back.
Yes, it
It
is.
looks like the Danes and the Belgians are back in contact. The Belgians just ducking around the back of the Danish crew to get on the V behind Che and Kaziskova. And the second South African crew.
Are you still on me or can I change?
Well, first South African crew.
Yeah, Ward and Russell now being absorbed back into that chasing bunch. Springtime here in South Africa, but you'll see the landscape in the background very brown, a symptom of the drought which has been ravaging this country for 2 years. By this stage, you would normally expect the land around the drift to be far greener, but is what it is. The country is dealing with it. Luckily not affecting this event in any way.
This is so similar to yesterday's K1 race. It's almost identical. You got the Spaniards, the 2 Hungarians, Great Britain. It's almost a rerun.
Psychologically, Lonnie Belcher must have just brought such a spring in the step to this boat as well, because the sense of self-belief and the ability that you can do it and dictate will count hugely for them today.
I think it's a really tough call for Mason in the back. You know, you paddle with a world champion. It's a very different feeling. You almost feel that responsibility that if it goes wrong, it's your fault. And that's not the reality of it. A K2 is a K2, but there's always that little bit of pressure on you to perform.
Kaziskova pulling Russell and Ward. That's Arthur and Byrne, I beg your pardon.
So I think Kaziskova might close that gap by the time it comes to the first portage. And I'll be very careful what I say about her on the portage so I don't get in too much trouble today. Leverett leading, chase pack. Sletjo and Spickland to their left. Lane and Broughton in the back, tucked in nicely. Alvarez and Arquero, and on this side, Ward and Russell.
Ire and Hogan on the outside.
And Ferro and Granat already reeling in. The Australians, Murray and Rodley.
Check JB shot. I think the chasing pack has caught the leading pack.
Slightly ahead of their compatriots and Kova and Doce. But we saw Kova yesterday. He stuck around for about 4 laps and then was away and clear. So, yep.
Yeah, they caught them. That's a good grind up there by Kaziskova and Hiroshima. Arthur and Byrne sitting on their wave and taking full advantage of that, and now coming up on the outside. So that 6-boat bunch suddenly becomes an 8-boat bunch as they come down on lap 2.
South Africans have an attempt to come up the left side. Maybe just to get to the side. It looks hard work at the moment, and it's hard to see them coming around Kisley, especially as the pace picks up again, and it's Che doing the damage again. So as Che takes over, be interested to see if Kisley takes on Belcher, or if Belcher holds her off or wants to actually fall back to the V. I think it's worth falling back to the V personally. They've got the speed to be safe if anything happens, and that's what they've done. So a really strong front 4 now again.
I'm going to ask you a question, Ivan. Renata overnight, after having taken stock of the K1 race, how would she have recharged the emotional batteries to come into this thing in full fighting spirit?
She's an experienced racer. She will have experienced upsets before. We haven't seen them all, obviously, but she will have dealt with it well, and she wants to come out here today and be the Renata Che that we know.
So Leverett and Orens in the Australian colours leading the chase group now. 8 back at the front. Renata Shea and Alexandra Barrow coming past the start pontoon.
So this fits really well for Belcher and Mason. They're in the V while the fastest leader is leading. It's only Che really pushing this on today. So the longer they can stay on the tail of Renata Che, the more the scales tip in their favour, I think. Ward and Russell even struggling now on this chase pack. It's Leverett and Arons leading it. And it's a
Norwegian
very
girls on the
tenuous hold that Ward's got on this group now.
They're also racing in a different boat. They were struggling with the setup in their previous boat. They weren't 100% comfortable in it. Just after the SA Champs, they raced in a rate where they were really all over the shop, and I think they finally made peace with the fact that that wasn't an option. So it's new boat, right on the eve of the World Champs. It's not great.
It just, I mean, I don't know the crews. I haven't watched the Nationals, and I haven't watched them train, but it doesn't look like a tidy K2. It's uncomfortable looking. There's no real coordination in that boat. So some K2s are like that. You can have two very good individuals in one boat, and it just doesn't pan out.
And they're the best of mates. You put them in a double ski, they're unplayable. You can't touch them, yeah.
Okay. We've got similar in our second Great Britain crew today. We've got Broughton, who's top 5 in the world often. We've got Alex Lane there, who was 3rd in the under-23s, and they're back in that group as well. And some K2s, it just doesn't happen.
It's territory we have to go into today. Just what makes a combination click. You cannot, there's no sort of formful way of deciding who's going to be a successful combination. It's just got to put it on the water, and some click, some don't.
I think, yeah, sometimes you get in a K2 and it works immediately, and other times you have to work at it. And a lot of the boats I've raced in, we've had to work at. But if you do spend the time, they come right. And
there does also come a stage when you've just got to pull a line through it and say, this is never going to work, mate. Let's go different directions.
Absolutely, you do. Yep.
I think I've got a team that's just pulled out.
It's Che taking the initiative. Kisley, Great Britain crew have come out of the V. I guess that was on the turn. We didn't keep you informed. Italians already retiring. That's sad for them. So we're about 50 meters away from the Portage now. Koziskova off the back again. It's a hard day again for her. This is going to be interesting to see. Belcher yesterday, dominant force on the Portage, and if that's the same again today,
I got a swimmer here at the turn, boy.
in a very similar way to yesterday's race. Away you go, Che and Barra. They really need to be covered if they make a move, because they are very, very happy to do the work out the front.
Yeah, I'll record.
Struggling at the back of this group. But Belcher, here we go again. It's so similar to yesterday's race. Belcher and Mason are putting it into Che and Barra here.
4 boats together.
And this is great, great news. Danish, great decision to go in early there. It's waiting time for Kisley. She's in trouble. The Danes were the best on that by far. And they're away clear. They're going to work hard. The Hungarians in all sorts of trouble. Che has turned Kisley into the bank. Neither of them get away from the side. They're in all sorts of trouble. It's not what Che needs, that's for sure. So it's Peters and Brooks with Kisley. They're the chase pair, but it's Denmark and Great Britain away. And Che looks to be struggling, to be fair. She's using the South Africans to close the gap. And I think, I don't know, it's so early, but Che just doesn't look the full ticket today.
Oh, and we've got another boat being emptied at the top.
That's Lane and Broughton. Terrible news for them. I don't know if we'll get to see what happened there, but probably not, because the cameras are on the Portage. So look at Che dangling off the back of the South African crew there.
It was just clumsy on the Portage, wasn't it?
Oh, it's horrible. Horrible to watch. It wasn't the professional outfit we've seen for so many years. Australians away in the second group with Spaniards. Norwegians just pulling away from the side now. As the Americans get in, that's the second yellow boat. That's Ray and Hogan. And behind them, Jenna Ward and Russell.
And not just because they're on the front bunch, but Rosenkilde and Hansen are looking so ominous at the moment.
They were the best organised. I mean, Belcher and Mason, they were first in. That was safe, they weren't in any rush. But in the melee behind, the Danes read it so well, ducked in early, got themselves out of trouble, and were actually first to leave. They're still leading now, look. So Kisley back in touch, no problems at all for her. Belcher, Mason, no problems for them. Sad, probably ending for these two because it's not a crew that's comfortable enough, I don't think, to want to trawl around on their own at the back. But for me, it's early
C1
doors,
bottom turn, boy.
It's going to be very hard to beat the Great British crew here.
I'm being technical and picky here. If your boat gets emptied by an official on the course, is that outside assistance? Does that get an ITO excited and taking out flags for you?
I'm not sure ITOs and excitement have ever been put together in the same sentence before, but I think that's probably acceptable if you want to carry on. I mean, yeah.
I think just judging from mechanicals that have happened in the past at the Nationals, it's apparently you're allowed help, but as long as they don't help the boats progress forwards in any way. So let's hope that's okay. I'm sure it will be.
But Granite and Ferro continue to put on the squeeze at the front of the C1 race. The second Spaniards with them, Campos and Sanchez. But this is the chase pack, which is Borgil and Gluza. It's the second Hungarians of Kolsar and Dori, and the Czechs of Brezina and DeLuy.
Question coming in online. Did the South African crew just refit their paddle?
Yeah, I got news a little bit early on. Jenna Ward and Nicky Russell, they had some paddle problems. They had to wait until the Portage to make the change. It looks like Nicky Russell's changed to paddle at the back there, and that could have been what set them back early on in the race.
So the front three C2s coming in. Also picking up a comment online saying, gee, these turns are tough for the C2s. It's a five-boy graduated turn, and the skilled crews are making it work, but not all of them.
And talking to them yesterday, I mean, I remember in hindsight, we spoke about Kova on the last turn. He went really, really wide, and so did some of the K1s. That turn's much sharper than the other two. So when you come to a group, here's the C2s getting out for their first portage. Ferro and Granite. First out, Campos, Sanchez behind, Covidoce running well. All three will get in together. It was really interesting there, Campos and Sanchez. In the back, the guy put the boat down so they could drag it, so the front guy could turn it upside down and empty it, and then he joined back in again. So it looks like the Great Britain crew are carrying on after their swim. They just left the portage just before the C2s arrive. I think the C2s, Kova, going to be in second by the look of it. Two Spaniards, they're away first. Kova, they're all together still. So no real drama there. As the second group get out, Hungary, Czech and Poland, the gap about 40 seconds.
So it could be a game changer for Team Spain in this year's Worlds. As the chasing bunch comes through, one of them going through the feed zone. But that margin between the Hungarian and two Spanish boats at the front is increasing, so I think the prospect of any of these crews hunting for medals is getting dimmer and dimmer as the race goes on.
DeLuy and Brezina there, emptying their boat as they get in. At the front, the Danes have led all the way from the portage to the top turn. And it's still a 6-7 boat group. So the Danes doing really well. Great Britain, I think, will be lapping this up. Che in trouble going around the turn. It's just so unusual to see her so badly organised. So there's a big gap opened up, and that was all Che's doing.
Yep.
She couldn't get around the turn. So Kisley has to do the closing after that, because I just don't think Che's got the engine to do it this year. And off the back of that group, I think it's the Spaniards really paying the price for that move.
Really clumsy moving around the boys.
Spaniards fighting it off the back of the group. Danes going, Che reluctant to come up to the side of the Danes. Kisley brought her to where she is now, and now it's Che's own job to get to the right-hand side of the lead crew. Here we go now. She's making the effort, but it's not convincing.
So Rosenkilde and Hansen at the front. Belcher and Mason, big beneficiaries of that. They were able to get away and put all the stress on the remainder in that bunch.
Leverett and Ahrens and Alvarez and Arquero on their own currently. We'll try and get you a true glimpse of where they are in the race, but off the back it's still the other Spaniards, Barrios, Figueras, trying desperately. There is a wash there if they can get there. So it looked like the Australians and the Spaniards have made a break from the South Africans, Americans and Norwegians.
So there's confirmations of the time at the top turn can. Denmark, Belgium and the Spanish crew, well, we now know is reeling off the back of that bunch as a result of the clumsy move going around the turn cans.
And it is Australia and Spain 15 seconds or more ahead of the South Africans and their chase group of 3. Spain having all sorts of pain imposed on them here.
The water's so smooth, it's a great look at the washes and just what you can do with them and where you can target them.
It's a shame we didn't continue the aerial view there because the Spaniards cleverly ran down those outside waves. They've used them all the way to get to the tail of the Belgians, and then it's just one hard jump into the back behind Kisley and Mihalic. And finally, they can get some sort of relaxation, but that was hard for them. That was a tough 2 minutes.
Arthur and Byrne in the black boat on the outside there. The Spaniards tucked once again right into the tail of this group. The pace being set up front by the Danes, who've certainly seized the moral high ground in this front bunch. Rosenkilde and Hansen looking very, very impressive early on in this women's K2 race.
And they were both, well, to be fair, not impressive in their respective K1 races. Yeah, Hansen and in the seniors and Rosenkilde in the under-23s didn't impress, but maybe this was their preferred event and maybe this is where they're hoping to score big. But this, as it sits, suits Belcher and Mason in the blue boat down to the ground.
And they've been awake to everything that's happened in this bunch. Every time that there's been a split or a move, they've been wide awake to it, and they've often been the principal beneficiaries.
Just never troubled to this point. They haven't had to do a single catch-up. They haven't had to do anything they don't want to do. And I think that sets them apart in this group. Everyone else has caught up at some stage.
You'll know better than me, but a really streetwise head in Belcher?
Absolutely. She's grown up. She grew up at the same canoe club as myself. Yeah, that was the culture there. You learn or you didn't survive, essentially. And now she's moved up to a new training group at Nottingham because that's where the performance department are. And she's training with some Nottingham Canoe Club with a similar sort of group.
I guess there's no better school than the School of Hard Knocks.
Just something interesting, I've just heard a bit more about what happened to Jenna Ward and Nikki Russell there. And we were talking about it yesterday and how you would change paddle lengths and paddle sizes. They obviously just weren't feeling it today, blades a bit big, maybe a bit long. So they've actually changed to smaller paddles, nothing to do with broken equipment. They just obviously maybe tried something bigger and longer to really just up it today, but they've gone back to the smaller blades that they used to.
Well, their compatriots, Hayley Arthur and Mish Byrne, looking very comfortable on the outside of that front bunch of 7 as they come back into view underneath the bridge here at Campsdrift Drive. On the opposite bank, the fans are already beginning to stake out their territory for what they are anticipating as being a big afternoon here. Fantastic memories from yesterday afternoon when that opposite bank was packed. But it's the Danes, Rosenkilde and Hansen at the front. Belcher and Mason on their outside in the blue boat.
Hansen, of course, the only person in recent memory to beat the Hungarians in the K2 marathon back in Copenhagen 3 or 4 years ago now. And I think a different partner. I'm really struggling at the moment to remember, but I'm sure it was a different partner because Rosenkild's so young. But yeah, Hansen's used to winning these races. She's won a couple of times in the past. And really the only person to break the Hungarian dominance of recent years.
We have been sharpening our pencils overnight. We had a 100% score on lap counting yesterday, so we're not going to butcher it on the final day.
This is interesting. Kisley's just ducked out the V because Che's taking the lead. Belcher and Mason will want to come round the outside of the Danes, and I'm not sure how happy the Danes will be with that. They're moving left to try and hold them off, but not a chance. Belcher and Mason just too strong for the Danes there. Danes settle for the V, which is not a bad thing to settle for, to be fair. And Spaniards, again, they're the weakest in the group, it seems. And the Belgians also couldn't really cover the change of pace there. But great news for Arthur and Byrne. They were more than up to that.
And there in the distance, as she has been all weekend, is Anna Koziškova and Hirocheva just doing her own thing. Paddling different lines on her own, just struggling to stay with the group.
You can't fault a commitment to the cause, but but for a little turn of speed, they could be so much more comfortable. But Che at the front, she's obviously decided she wants to lead into these portages. Kisley will have raced Che 1,000 times by now, I'm sure, and knows that yesterday, I'm gonna bet that yesterday was the first time she'd ever beaten her, and definitely a change in the balance of power. Danes getting round in the V, uncomfortably but tidily. There's a bit of a coming together with the South Africans. Away goes Kisley. There's a little gap opened up, and this is a dangerous gap because once two Hungarians get out in the front, sometimes, well, often, more often than not, in fact, that gap never closes. This is going to be crucial for the Danes. It just depends how hard Che is travelling. Belcher and Mason a long way back on that lead wash.
Fortunately for the ladies that lost out there, Jay would have been unaware of what had happened behind her there, so she would have just kept her consistent pace going through to the portage, which would have been in the favour of the girls that had just had that little bash together and knock off the bunch there. So they should be back on safely before the portage.
It's hard work. That gap isn't closing fast. If they work all the way to the portage and then these front three crews run well, it could be significant. Leverett and Arons.
And Alvarez and Alquero with them as they come around to the bottom turn can.
Leverett, of course, yesterday took an early swim, retired, and had a bad day. But here we come. It's straight into the portage. It's Che first, Belcher second. At the back of the group was the Danes. Now Kisley out of the boat. So 1, 2, 3 is Hungary, Great Britain. The Danes in the gap is going to open up. The Spanish and the South Africans are in real danger here. The Belgians and Spaniards are gone. They're not going to make contact with this group again. And Belcher again, just as she did yesterday. She is the dominant force this weekend. They'll run right to the end. Hungarians a bit better organised this time.
And it's the Danes who've again
Danes are in trouble.
badly.
Not so clever this time from the Danes. They're still struggling to get their boat into the water. Belcher away, Kisley away, Che away. And this is brutal for all the other crews because I don't think this gap will close now. Kisley is working hard. Mihalic in the back, already world champion in the under-23s, is piling on. And this is now a three-boat race.
Well, the Danes have got a lot of work to do. The South Africans have hopped on their wave to try and capitalise on it, but a clumsy decision from the Danes that they put in. There was plenty of room. They just chose to go where the traffic was, and it was asking for trouble.
After the genius of their first portage, it's sad to see that because if they'd done a good one there, they could have been away, but no one's closing this gap. It never happens that a gap is closed on two Hungarians in the K2. And now you've got your medals sitting right here. And it's just going to be a cat and mouse game now. The pace will be applied for probably a whole long lap, and then the race begins. You can see how hard Belcher and Mason are having to work to stick with Kisley. Danes have come wide, but I think they're a day late and $1 short.
Well, the one takeaway from that Portage is that Belcher and Mason are always going to be the dominant force in the Portage, and when they really need to pull the trigger, that could be the biggest weapon in their arsenal.
But Kisley and Mihalic look to be the strongest crew on the water to me at the moment. We saw Belcher outpace them on a couple of the early challenges, but the running speed of Kisley and Mihalic is stretching Belcher and Mason here. You can see the timing's gone a bit ragged in the Belcher-Mason crew. Jenna Ward running along. Russell struggling to make contact with her boat there. Away go Australia and Spain. And, oh my word, this is heavy duty at the front.
Kisley and Mihalic suddenly look full of intent here.
This is hard for all three crews now.
You mentioned earlier that Che was just looking a little off colour. We saw it yesterday.
C2 bottom turn, boy.
But they're suddenly looking a shadow of what Kisley and Mihalic are bringing to this race right now. Belcher and Mason really having to work hard to stay with him.
Compare the view you've just seen to this. These crews are not travelling even close to that speed.
Yeah, I think they've given up any hope of staying with him, to be honest. There's paddles down at the back there from Che and Barra. Barra in the back. Can't understand why she'd be doing that unless she was just getting fresh juice.
Just coming round to the right-hand side. But this is a stretch for these two. Figueras and Barrios there with Brooks and Peters.
Well, it was always a case of when they were going to fall off that front bunch. I mean, they fought valiantly back onto it, but they were always didn't have enough firepower on that boat, to be honest.
Yeah, those trailing two groups of two looking very pedestrian compared to the pace at the front here. The gap has just opened up. It's going to be huge by the top turn, I think.
So 2 of the 6 portages done in the 7-lap race. And that pace being set by Kisley and Mihalic as they go up to the top turn can is still pretty tense.
It's slowed a little bit. You see a lot more overlap between the boats on the wash and the lead boat. So the pace has dropped, but that stung just a little bit, I'm sure, even to the crews that are in that front group.
Well, they would love to turn at that top turn can, the still turn can, and know with some certainty that this burn has set the medal contenders aside from the rest.
Che stopped and put her paddles down again. Here's the C2, Spain. A few lengths on Hungary.
Coming into the portage, the drone giving us an overhead perspective as the 2 Spaniards and the Hungarian C2s come into the portage. And it's the Hungarians who are off the back of the bunch right now.
Grana, Ferro leading as they have been all the way. Campos, Sanchez on their tail. Hungarians about 3 lengths adrift and choosing to come through the drinks lane. Spaniards side by side. Spaniards desperately need a couple of good medals in this race to save their weekend.
Cobra and Dolce having gone through the feed zone off the back of this bunch right now. I guess many of us would have expected them perhaps to be more dominant in this race, but they're not out of it by any stretch of the imagination.
In fact, they gained ground really on the other 2 crews over that portage. And they're back in contention. So from the 3 medals in the C2 to the 3 medals in the K2.
Back to the top turn now, and it's the front 3 K2 crews that are coming up to the top turn.
We saw Che really struggle on this turn on the last lap. Just couldn't seem to get the boat round comfortably. but no trouble this
That's
time.
far more like
and that's
it.
just positioning. She's just positioned herself slightly further forward on the lead wash, and you get sucked around the turn. Another 3 feet back, and she would have been in the same trouble as she was on the last lap. So
that drone
pace
shot
has dropped now.
Yeah.
In fact, the pace has stopped now.
And the drone shot shows us that the chasing boats are actually not that far behind. The effort to bridge is obviously critical to them right now. And they've been gifted that opportunity by this pace coming off the front three, and they're reshuffling it. The British boat goes to the front. The Danes now grinding away.
It's the South Africans. Arthur and Byrne leading that chase now. The Danes hanging on to them. South Africans looking pretty good there. And you can see the tail of the lead group. They're close now. So maybe we were wrong.
Now they've certainly got a sniff of being able to bridge back onto that front bunch. Haley
Still-
Arthur and Mish Byrne are up for the fight today. It's pretty impressive.
Still a significant gap. Again, Che and Barra.
Mark Cameron wants to know if you want the men or the women.
Stuff, whatever stuff they're fiddling with. And the South Africans are going to get back. And I don't think we've ever seen that before, where the Hungarians have had the opportunity to run and they failed to do so. So there goes Che now. The V could easily open up for the South Africans, which would be great news for them and terrible news for the Danes.
Yeah, and that's what they sense.
South Africans came to the left of the white boat of Kisley, expecting Kisley to move up to the right, but they haven't done so.
I don't think Kisley's going to move up. She's going to stay there, keep the pressure on the South Africans, and the Danes are going to have to work hard at the back. It's probably not a wise move, really, to move up, but Kisley, I'm sure, we've watched her sit at the back of the bunch yesterday many, many times, really comfortable and still finishing strong. So she's not going to do any favours for the South Africans, and she's going to sit there and make sure that diamond opportunity for the South Africans doesn't open up.
Mish Byrne in the back of that boat. Tiny little wisp of a girl. Got a heart of a lion, though. Incredibly technically proficient surf ski paddler. A tiny little girl, but if you put her in a big downwind or choppy offshore condition, she'll whip any other girl you put on the water
Danish
with her.
boat looking pretty ragged timing-wise. That's because the paddler in the back is currently concentrating on pumping the boat out. You can see the little jets of water coming out from between the two paddlers. When the back paddler does that and you're in the front, you hate them quite a lot, because all the coordination goes, the power drops from the back person, and you get this juddering feeling, and it's really uncomfortable. You know they're doing a job for you, but you still resent it.
Yeah, especially if there's a lot of water to get out, because then they have to increase the intensity of the pumps. The pumps are mounted on the footrest there, but if you can keep it in time with the stroke, and it should be part of every stroke, just to make sure that any water that lands up there gets ejected. But if you have to go to more intense than that, it just becomes a damn nuisance.
Arthur there in the front of the South African boat, done a really good job so far. Hansen in the back of the Danish K2, now back in time. The group strung out. So front group of 5. Which is a bit annoying to me in commentary, because I'd already colour-coded the Danes and the South Africans as a second group. They're now highlighted in green instead of yellow, and there's no way back from that in the commentary box.
Ivan, we were chatting with Nandor yesterday about having to be a psychologist as well. Everybody sitting in a K2 has got to be a psychologist, and you have to be able to manage the personalities in the boats. Boats don't always go well all of the time, and the temper's always fray, and it's never your fault. Of course, you're always perfect. It's always your partner's fault. But being the psychologist and being able to manage the person sitting in the boat with you is key.
It is, and you have to understand them. And as a driver, you have to know the strengths and weaknesses of your engine. And as the engine, you have to know the needs of your driver. And most of the learning curve, I've raced a number of K2 marathons, and the first few races you do, you're educating your engine. From my engine, I always needed to know what was happening, and then I needed him to know when I was going to go hard, and they're the crucial things, really. For the backman, they've got a fairly simple job, but if they do it wrong, it's a nightmare for the driver.
Yeah, and if you're sitting in the front of the boat, you just need the person in the back to talk to me. If you're struggling, whatever the problem is, you've got to let the guy in the front know. You can't take for granted that he can pick it up by some sort of photosynthesis.
The worst thing a back paddler can do when you're the driver is overwork. And you think as the driver, you think, wow, we're going well here. And then the screws get turned at a portage or a sprint, and you call on your backman who's gone. And they're no use to you. And you think, all of a sudden, a race that you thought was really easy unravels.
Oh, bumping and nudging amongst the two C2s as they go around the corner.
Kova's struggling to get round. He struggled a bit in his C1 yesterday to get round the turns as well. You can see the gap that's opened up because of that, 2 or 3 lengths.
And then you get those K2 partnerships where it's almost telepathic. You can almost sense that somebody's heading into a bit of a dark hole and you need to pull them through it. And
all the good crews are telepathic. There isn't a good crew that doesn't have a massive instinctive or learned communication. Yeah, there's something special about a good K2 crew. I think one of the best crews was way back in South Africa last time. There's a Hungarian crew, Attila Jambor and Sakali, and their unity was extraordinary. I think they're for me one of the best crews that ever paddled, and to watch them was amazing, just amazing.
Especially if you're tactically in sync, if you decide when to go, when to move, and that other person just knows instinctively that it's going to happen. So there's no verbal in between, which could possibly give the other boats a heads up.
There isn't, and it's little visual clues, it's feelings. I remember the backman I used to paddle with, Steve Harris, in a couple of the marathons that we did well in, and he'd say there's something in my neck position. Yeah, your head just goes forward a little bit. When you're going, he sees that straight away, and he's on it. And it's things that you wouldn't pick up if you hadn't been in the back there for an awfully long time. Che has clearly decided she wants to be leading into the portages today. She's positioned herself at the front of the group, which is great for Arthur and Byrne. Put her paddles down. There's a lot of putting the paddles down and faff going on today in that boat.
For no apparent reason, too. I mean, they didn't seem to be adjusting anything or picking up juice, and Kisley's looking so settled and so ominous in that boat.
Kisley looks good, but Mihalic in the back seems to be pushing on a little bit too much for me. She looks a little bit rushed. But certainly when they put the hammer down and went from the portage, they were the most impressive crew of the bunch, I think.
Oh, the Danes
Kisley coming around on the
boat.
inside. Kisley's going to take the lead here. Che won't be happy with that, I don't think. And you can see there's a bit of a battle ensuing. Che wants to come to the portage first.
Oh, she's absolutely adamant about being first to the pontoon.
And the Danes fighting it a bit at the back of that group. They haven't really got anywhere to go. They just need to get to the portage in touch. Che taking it on, stretching them a little bit here. Belcher Mason looking under a little bit of pressure.
Gee, the Danes came
Arthur
out.
struggling to keep the boat direction in the V there. Brooks, Peters, Barrios, Figueras. A little look over their shoulder to see where the chasers are. But here's the race.
Yeah, into the portage. And it must be said, the Danes came out of the block so hot this morning, but they're second-class citizens on the sponge right now. They're constantly under pressure. So portage number 3 we're coming into right now. And once again, it's Renata Shire and Barra that insist on getting down to the portage first, but they're going to be under pressure from Kisley and Mihalic.
It's going to be the Danes
British
who
boat.
suffer here, because I think Che's coming in early. There'll be enough
Squeezing
room for the
3
Great
boats
Britain
out to the
crew, but
top.
the Danes are in all sorts of trouble there. Only just getting onto the landing stage, the back paddler.
Oh, and they've dropped
But
the
they're
boat.
out
That
well.
rudder's bouncing on the back. Oh, well, let's hope that rudder's not damaged.
Oi.
Messy takeout by the
So-
Hungarians, and they're squeezing him on the corner.
So Barra, but look at Belcher run. They're just faster on the land than the 2 Hungarians. Che suffering. You hope that Che's being a bit harsh on her partner there. You see how far forward she's carrying it on the cockpit. Barrett in the back's got so much weight on that in that K2 now.
But it's Belcher and Mason getting away once again, getting the jump on the
Belcher,
put-in.
Mason clear, away and tidy.
Are they going to try and make it count?
Mason needs to not push the back of the boat out as soon as she does there, because it's harder to get out from the landing stage. But it's Great Britain, Hungary, Denmark, and the South Africans. Hayley Arthur's got some work to do now.
That group will reform, and the Danes were far sharper that time.
But I don't think that Belcher and Mason will take on the pace anywhere near to what Kisley did at the last lap. So that group will reform.
Brooks and Peters and Barrios and Figueroa still together as they take out for the Portage. But that string is definitely snapped to the front bunch for them. So it's Belcher and Mason who are now at the front. Another superb Portage from them. Kisley and Mahalic were good for it.
So rare to see Che and Barra under enough pressure that they start to make small errors. The Danes did really well there because they came in right at the end of the landing stage. There was no room at all for the back paddler there to get onto the landing stage. She had to wait a little bit, but they were still out really cleanly and quickly and back in with the group. So they survived that well. It was Hansen, very experienced paddler, who dealt with that situation. Here's Kaziskova and Herchova. They're going to be closed down by the Australians, Leverett and Ahrens. The Spaniards, Alvarez and Alquero. And all three of those are going to be together in the very near future.
Kaziskova, another paddler who's been sprinting a lot this season. I don't know whether that's going to have any bearing on her marathon form.
I'd hesitate to call it sprinting. She's been going to the sprint event. She hasn't made any impact, really. And I think, yeah, maybe it's a gamble for her. She knows she's caught for speed often, so maybe it was an attempt to beef up her speed for these events. But it hasn't played out well for her. She didn't have a good time in the Sprint World Championships in the 5K, and she hasn't had a good time this weekend.
Yeah.
Right, how this happened, I don't know, but Hayley Arthur has made a fantastic job of getting herself not only back in the group, but back into safety within the group. And it's Che and Barra getting the dog end of this at the moment.
And the Danes have bounced back nicely as well. They were scratching on the outside as they put in right at the back end of this group of 5.
See Barra putting the paddle in way earlier than Che.
Yeah, the timing is not good
at
all.
It's not the drilled crew that we've seen for the past how many years?
I noticed on the Portage there was just a quick glance, and it wasn't a happy glance at all. It was a very edgy and unhappy looking communication between those two girls.
Yeah, we mentioned early doors the handles on the boats. And in a K2, the balance point isn't central. So if the front paddler grips right at the front of the cockpit, the back paddler has something approaching 2/3 of the weight of the boat, I think. So often the back handle is moved behind the back cockpit so that you even out that weight distribution. But that's not what the Hungarians have done. And Che is running with her hand literally at the front of the cockpit. And that's really hard on your back paddler.
And we saw as they got out that Che and Barra were a little bit clumsy. Barra actually dropped the boat, and the boat bounced on that understern runner a couple of times on the wooden pontoon. And that is really not what you want to do.
Ferro and Grana comfortably round the turn, unlike Campos and Sanchez, who forced Kova and Doce way out to the left. Kova and Doce only just going to make it round before they hit the dry bit. And Ferro and Grana really seem to be dictating in this one.
Got a C2 crew that's pulling out. Ryan?
Of course, neither of those raced yesterday, as opposed to Kova and Doce, who both raced yesterday, and that's maybe significant. In come the second Hungarians to the retirement pontoon. That's Kolsar and Dori. Dori already with the World Championship gold round his neck from the under-23s. He's going to get nothing from this one.
Well, we go back to what we were saying about Manuel Campos after yesterday's C1 race and how there would possibly be benefit into keeping a little bit of his fuel in reserve for the K2 race with Sanchez. But the strong crew certainly early on has definitely been Grania and Ferro.
Without a doubt, and the gap opens up frequently between the two Spaniards and the Hungarians, and that's they're normally side by side, Ferro and Grana, and the Hungarians, Kova, Doce.
Just an interesting distance off the pack at this stage. We know he's got that killer burst of speed, but he doesn't want to have to do that from too far back. Into the Portage they go. The two Spaniards get away together. Kova and Doce 15, 20 meters back.
Ferro and Grana running really well through the Portage. Campos and Sanchez having a refuel. Hungarians lumbering a bit in the background. Hungarians this stage on the last lap had actually caught up a little bit on the running. They have again maybe, but at the front, still Che. Oh, Che's got a little opportunity around the inside. It's the Great Britain crew have been forced out wide by the Danish, who struggled to keep their line. And it's the first test for Belcher and Mason. It's the first time we've seen them have to do something.
Oh, and they're up to it.
They're up to it, but it's not massively impressive. They're settling in now. And I think they would choose to come around the outside of the South Africans. Here we go. He'll go wide, outside the wash, run back in. That's wide enough, girls.
Yeah, it's a bit of a...
Come back in already. A little look over her left shoulder from Arthur, and she knows, and she's more than happy to be squeezed back into that V. So hard work for the first time for Belcher and Mason. And the Danes are not backing out of that V. That is unreasonable from the Danes. Hayley Arthur has done really well to hold her position.
But that was clumsy. It
really
was.
In that position, the Danes should have seen that way earlier. They're paddling on opposite sides of the boat now.
Oh,
in the Danish crew. That's
all
really scrappy. Literally on the opposite side of the boat. You never see that from a crew at this level. They're not comfortable in the Danish crew there now.
But full marks to Belcher and Mason. They had to play the cards they were dealt going into that top turn, and they were put in a sticky position. But wow, they fought their way back beautifully. They look like they've got the full range of Arsenal in that boat, you know, to deal with any situation. They've got the speed. They're thinking properly. They're remaining composed when they're being put under pressure, and that definitely bodes well for that blue GB boat.
It was a relief to see that, you know, what was a relief there was they came to the back of the South Africans and they didn't spend any time there. They knew they had enough to come all the way around in one go. If you're really struggling, you'd spend a little bit of recovery time at the back of the South African crew, but they didn't. So good news for Great Britain.
Back to the C2 race, and it's Kova and Doce who are straight back at the front of the two Spanish boats.
You'd have to think that if the Spanish really fancied their chances here, they would have made a bit more of an effort to break Kova and Doce.
I think what's happening, you watch Kova and Doce as they come into the portage, they're always like 20, 30 meters behind. And just at in the space of 100 meters on every single portage, they're right back onto the group. So that's got to be playing with the Spanish's minds a little bit.
And they seem so calm about it as well. There's no rush. And so a beautiful aerial shot of the women's K2. What's interesting in these aerial shots, you see how little of canoeing is an arm sport. You see the arms just mirror what the chest does. And it's just the body rotation that drives these boats along. The arms only express the movement of the body. I'll try and tell my kids that day in, day out at home. Either I'm telling them the wrong thing, or they just don't listen to me anyway. It's hard to tell. South Africans not even breathing heavy at this stage, unlike the Danes, who are beginning to look a little bit ragged
Yeah, I've been really impressed this morning with Hayley Arthur and Mish Byrne. They're multidisciplinarians. They'll have a go at anything that involves paddling. So I think they came into this, I think they knew that they were perhaps less experienced. They were the greenhorns in this group, but they've come into this with a big heart. And Hayley in the front has got a really, really cool head.
Oh, very interesting to note. Hayley Arthur actually comes from a rowing background. She represented South Africa in rowing for a few years. And I think she's only been in the kayak for 4 or 5 years. So she's actually started kayaking very late in her life. But the two of them have worked really hard on this combination. It was great for South African confidence to have Jenna Ward and Kaita Purchase win the silver last year. That gave women's paddling in South Africa a lot of confidence. And these girls know they can go head-to-head with Kaita and Jenna at any time. So that gives them confidence coming into this race.
They're actually all part of the single most important core of women's training, which is down at Blue Lagoon in Durban. Lee McGregor and his MAC squad. The standard of women's racing in the country has just leapt up since that little core of girls got. Lee places a lot of emphasis on fun, so they do really hard sessions on Blue Lagoon. But on the weekend, you'll find them doing surf ski, and there's a big emphasis on fun and cross-discipline paddling.
I think it's really huge to keep that multidiscipline approach, whether you're doing sprint, marathon, surf ski. So many of the successful paddlers from South Africa and Australia have got that surf ski background. And I think it's just keeping the element of fun in your training, fun and variation.
We had a great chat with Nando Almasi yesterday when he was coaching here. He did his level best to keep people off rivers and out of surf ski races. He wanted them to stay on flat water and make sure that technique wasn't dented one little iota. Didn't succeed, really.
It's a tough call because training, there's a huge physiological aspect and a physical aspect to training, but the mental side is huge. And if people aren't doing what they want to do for most of the time they're out on the water, it just doesn't work.
There'd be 2 reasons why you do it. One, it's fun and it's something you love. Alternatively, it's what you do for a living. And there are very few countries in the world where you can head into paddling hoping to try and make a decent living out of it. To be blunt, it's always going to be a semi-professional or purely a pastime for you. And if you're traveling to a world championships on the other side of the world, virtually every athlete is dipping into their own pocket to get there. So it's got to be fun, first and foremost. Van der Kisley looking super composed in the front of that boat.
Kisley and Mihalik looking very, very strong at the front of this group. Rosenkild and Hansen maybe starting to show signs of fatigue there. We saw a slightly chaotic group change earlier. Actually, that chaos was managed really well by Hayley Arthur. There was a coming together and there was no real stress from the South African boat at all. They just waited it out and then got back in the V.
One of the reasons why Hayley Arthur, Hayley Arthur does so well there is that where they race domestically, they're always racing with the guys, and they're racing with second and third bunch guys where the testosterone is a big issue. The minute you see a girls' boat coming into a guys' group, they don't get given any luxuries and privileges. They often get short shrift in that bunch. So they're used to getting barged around, and they'll give it back to the guys as good as they've got. So a little bumper bashing like that will be no news that's going to shock either of those girls.
Spaniards and Belgians still on their own, but well, probably over a minute now behind, and they're in more danger of being caught from behind than they are from gaining any ground on the group in front. And the group behind these two is Spain, Czech Republic and Australia. But here's the leaders, and for the first time at the bottom turn, Renata Che is not in the lead. Instead, it's Kisley and Mihalic.
And just look at the timing in that Che Barrow boat as well, from that overhead view. I mean, it's distinctive by its awkwardness.
You're so used to seeing them out the front in these races, controlled, relaxed, moving well. It's just, they're not in their normal territory at all. I don't think...
The groove isn't there.
You can't remember the last time that Che was in a group of 5 in a race this far into a World Championship race. And now she's going to be put under a little bit of pressure because she's not first into the portage. South Africans opting to drop out of the V and come up the left-hand side.
Cam's
Great
got
Britain
C2
crew
leaders
won't
if
be
you want
forcing
that.
them onto the end of the pontoon unless they get made to by Kisley, but I don't think there'll be any stress for the South Africans. I think it's a good decision from them. I think there'll be left space this time.
Kisley Mahalik paddled into the middle of the pontoon and ran beautifully. So they've clearly got a plan that works for them, and I'm pretty sure that's going to leave space to their left for those that want to run long.
Yeah, the only thing, you see Barra looking left and right. That's her job. She needs to know what's happening, and she'll be communicating that with Che. And Che could now, she just looked to her left, she could well be telling Kisley to go in short, because that would suit her.
And the Danes are falling off the back of the bunch now as they come into the Portage.
It's always worth asking the lead crew to do something that suits you, because they might, you know, and that's the first, rather than do anything physical, just ask, and they can only say no. The C2s all together, as the K2s have got 50 metres to go to the Portage. They're just about to pull in now. Here we go. So Kisley going in fairly early, uncomfortably early for the South Africans.
The South Africans are squeezed
out. You can see
out.
Hayley Arthur's okay, but not Russell, sorry.
Mishburn. Oh, it's an
can't
awkward...
really get out, and they're in a little bit of trouble. A little look back from Byrne there, as if she was worried about the rudder. But through go Belcher and Mason.
Kisley Mahalik go into the feed zone to get fresh fluids.
Che and Barra. See how high Barra carries the boat. Bent arm, all the water's down the front for Che.
Well run Hayley Arthur and Mishburn.
Mason clear. And a pattern is evolving here. Whoa, a little bit of haste from the Great Britain crew. But they're away first. Then Hungary. Only a small gap, and I think it's all going to be safe for all of them here, because Belcher and Mason are not going to turn the screw. They're comfortable with a big group.
But again, that's Portage 4 that we can cross off now. And again, Belcher and Mason can bank the moral boost that they will be able to get away first on every Portage.
It's just a repeat of yesterday's race so far.
So 2 Portages to go in the ladies K2 race.
Brooks and Peters.
Barrios Figueroa taking out early. And the chasing 3 are snapping at their heels, it must be said.
They're going to get in together, I think, at the end of this Portage. Checks there, finally got some company.
Anna Kazishkova hasn't looked happy. Certainly yesterday, she's looking the same again today. And she's a serial smiler. You can tell when things are going well.
Such a lovely girl. You know, there wasn't a canoeing heart in the world that didn't, you know, weep when she won her race 2 years ago. You know, that was the most popular victory ever, I think. And you know, she's still enjoying herself.
Come on, Anna, come on.
They're all in.
Belgian girls clumsy at the put-in. The rudder bouncing on the jetty as they put it down. Seems they've got away safe.
Brooks and Peters, the tidiest crew out there, really, in paddling terms. There's a really good-looking crew. Ward and Russell, quite a long way off the pace.
Pretty sure that's the only overstern K2 on the water at the moment.
Seem cheerful enough, though.
Yeah, they're in it for the right reasons. They absolutely love any paddling challenge.
At the front, Kisley leads. Every lap that goes by now plays into the hands of Belcher and Mason, I think.
They've spent an awful lot of their time on that first wave, and they've managed their race fantastically so far. Busy following some of the online chatter here. Linda Kebekolu tells me, I'm watching the live stream and I'm loving it, but I'm literally within walking distance of the drift. Come on, lad. It's a beautiful spring day. Get yourself hell out of the house and come and watch.
C2 approaching bottom turn.
Margin in this group as the group changes shape. The Spaniards couldn't duck round the back of the Belgians quick enough. Made a little bit of contact, but no harm done. Australians fighting the second Spaniards for the V, and it's the Australian win there.
Back with the front 5 now.
That's a compliment, Justin.
I love the impression of speed that the drone shots give.
And the one constant in the shot has been that blue boat sitting comfortably on the first wave.
They haven't spent any time or any significant time outside the front four, only at the top turn on the last journey round, where they knocked offline by the Danes and ended up a really wide turn and having to close, what, 3 or 4 lengths. But round the turn, Granite and Ferro.
So these 3 crews round the bottom turn, the Eurosteel bottom turn, going
Ferro
really
and
wide,
Granite
almost
again.
into the bank. That's messy.
Ferro and Granite really seem to have these turns organised, and they seem to be putting on a little bit of a spurt there. Again, the Hungarians are third of the 3, but each time we've seen them portage well.
And that Campos Sanchez boat just looks a little bit untidy on the turns.
They're closing up on their compatriots though, and it's just going to be a repeat of every other portage we've seen coming in.
Cobra and Dolce are wise to it as well. They're very mindful of not getting caught in that Campos Sanchez boat going wide at the turns.
But Cobra, Dolce haven't been stressed by that up to this point. They just run a little bit faster, get in together. And by the time they're making their way up to the top turn, the group has reformed every lap so far.
Yep. So pristine racing conditions here at Camps Drift. See that elusive cable that's bringing us the television images from the top turn running along the bank there. Precious commodity, mobile commodity apparently.
So Ferro leading Campos into this 4th portage. Cova, no rush, no fuss, seems relaxed. Little empty out by Sanchez there.
Ferro and Grania going through the feed zone this time. Martin. So Martin Cova just so calm, cool and composed. Sign of a man on top of his game. Back to the women's race up at the top turn.
Let's hope this one goes a bit better for Belcher and Mason. Be easier if they were positioned
contact.
slightly further forward. Again, a little bit of contact to the back of the group.
Problems on Ryan
We've
for the
got a
C2.
swimmer in the C2
right in
race.
front of us.
Ryan for the C2
It's
that
Campos
fell
and
out.
Sanchez who've gone in. Campos and Sanchez have gone in at the put-in of the portage. They're going to have to get that boat out and empty it, but that's going to lose them. That's going to take them right off the front bunch.
Way, way easier to empty a C2 than a K2. There's envy from every K2 paddler in the world as they watch that. That's just, it's so... if there's one benefit to paddling canoes, you've just seen it right there. Oh, the horror of that in a K2 while you try and coordinate an emptying attempt compared to what you've just seen is a world apart. To lose 20 seconds on a swim is nothing.
But suddenly that C2 race has been strung out because Ferro and Grania have seized the initiative and they've taken off. They've got Cobra and Dolce chasing them. But let's go and have a look at that again. There's the takeout, rest of the T2. So let's have a look at that again. They put in, and they fell in the wrong side. They fell over the boat.
The outside
so
of
they
the
both
boat.
had to get over the boat and get back onto the jetty, which means pushing the boat down straight out. That's a
Watch the
really,
emptying out.
really
First
good
he
effort
makes the
from
mistake of trying
Jose
to pick up the boat in
Santos.
the middle, then he goes to the end, and from there it was a simple process.
There's
Chase
the
group back together in the women's K2, and the K2s are struggling to get round there.
That's Kazistova going wide again.
The turn's obviously about on the limit for getting a K2 round comfortably, and if you make a mistake, and a mistake means positioning your boat too far back on the wash, it's very, very hard to get round there.
The Polish crew of Gluza and Borgiel getting away from the portage.
That would be really interesting on the final turn if there's groups together. If you're the leader and you can stretch the boat on your inside to being just at the back of the wash, there's no way they're going to get round the turn with you. So I think they should be logging that really. And that's a weapon you've got in your arsenal should the last turn become significant. But there we go, front end of the C2 race.
And there's a drone shot of the front 5.
And South Africa moved to the front for the first time.
It is Hayley Arthur and Mish Byrne now leading the World Marathon Champs. Exciting moments for them. And that'll give them an adrenaline boost, particularly when the crowd gets wind of it and gives them a mighty cheer. The GB blue boat slips neatly onto their wave.
Kisley payback to Che, not moving up onto the wash. Maybe remembering a little bit of what happened yesterday.
Seeing comments come in from the Norwegian fans saying these girls are really good, but you need to realize that they're an up-and-coming crew as well, so we're going to see lots more of them.
What sort of turn of speed do the South Africans have, do you think, should it come to a sprint finish?
Oh, I don't think they'd fancy their chances up against that Van der Kisley boat at the moment. And the sort of turn of speed that we saw from the British girls, they would go for the grind, I think. They would go for the grind, if anything, and to try and string that group out.
Behind the graphic, Che is trying to come around Kisley. And she's done it. She's done it comfortably as well. It's the most impressive thing we've seen from Che and Barra today. Kisley, Mihalic, comfortable.
Emily Rosenkilde and Henrietta Hansen have really had to work hard to stay on this bunch.
I mean, Hansen, it's not a pretty technique, if you like. It's you certainly wouldn't teach your kids that, but it's very similar to Tor Nielsen from back in the day, and he was, well, hugely effective, to be fair. Arguably, their K2 with Lars Koch and Tor Nielsen was probably the hardest crew to beat, I think. And he used to paddle exactly the same, really. The South Africans leading the group.
And enjoying it as well.
I think most of the enjoyment in this group at the moment is in the blue boat, and they're seeing the laps tick away, and they're seeing a pattern emerging. They are the fastest through the Portage, and Lani Belcher knows that it's very hard to overtake her on the last 1,000 meters.
Alvarez and Alquero leading this bunch with the Australians on their outside.
So they're just to our left, about to come under the bridge. And it's all very relaxed. There's no one putting in any kind of meaningful effort in that group at the moment.
Yeah, we're going through the motions. Meeting obligations, sharing the rotation.
They're covering ground. And if I was Hungarian at this stage, I think I'd be wanting to put a little bit of hurt into Hayley Mason in the back of the blue boat, because they know that Belcher's good, and they know they can't beat her on the finishing sprint.
Yeah, and
they've got to do something. Here go the Danes around the outside. I think Belcher will end up having to take the lead here.
And Shai's coming off the other wave. So the Brits and the Hungarians are coming up either side of the South African boat.
Belcher will want to go on to Che now. So Belcher had to cover that, because otherwise she would have been squeezed out by the Danes, and that would have put her in a bad position for the turn. Che also had to cover it, and then once the two of them were out ahead of the South Africans, it was Belcher's choice to drop back onto Che. She knows she's got the legs on the Portage, and they can rest again. And a lot goes on in those little moments.
Yeah, and for Che, it's trying to assume as much control over that approach to the Portage and the Portage itself.
It's actually a very good move by the Danes there. they had to go for it, and if Belcher had ended up with a pull there, they would have had the first wave.
Yep.
The South Africans would have been in the diamond momentarily, and then squeezed by the next Hungarian both and out the back. So it was a good effort for them, and unfortunately it didn't work out, but Hungarians in the lead, so that's the way it's panned out.
I think it's definitely the Danish crew look the weakest of the four at the moment. They're always picking up the pieces. So the single crew that you saw in shot just about in front of the chase group is actually about to be lapped. There's the Americans in the yellow boat. Not sure where on the course they are, but here's the lead group. Che is planning on leading into the Portage for the 5th time.
So the front 5. How long is this going to stay 5, given that we've got 2 Portages to go?
Who's going to be motivated to break it down? The Brits aren't going to be motivated to break it down. South Africans, I don't think, have the speed to break it down. So it's only if the Hungarians decide that they need a very fast last long lap. And I think that's the only thing they can do to damage the Brits as well. So if they don't do it, it's because they can't do it, would be my take on it. So all round safely. Danes just straggling a little bit there.
I think we saw a little bit of their firepower earlier, but I have a feeling we might see the Van der Kisly-Mihalic crew suddenly start flexing muscle, trying to assert themselves.
I think it's what they need to do. We'll see this group formation for another 50 metres or so. On the last lap, we saw the South Africans dip out of the V, but now the Danes on the left are kind of blocking that route.
Cam's got CT leaders if you need a quick shot.
Stick with the V all the way to the Portage, and it's the Danes who could be vulnerable to not quite getting in on the end of the pontoon. The pontoon is way long enough for 5 boats, don't get me wrong. But if the Hungarians come in early, which they have each time, it really leaves the back paddler in that 5th position very, very vulnerable.
And there's a summary of what's happening in that seaboat race, with Campos and Sanchez now still trailing off the back there. Ominously, it's Martin Kova and Adam Dolce who are going to the front in that yellow boat, being shadowed by Grania and Ferro.
Just not Campos's weekend. It was a horrible day for him yesterday, and it just hasn't worked. South Africans have come out of the V, but to the right-hand side, perfect, absolutely right thing to do. They will go long, they'll get out cleanly, because the Hungarians will come in short here.
And the Danes are going to get squeezed.
Danes a little bit, but no, there's going to be plenty of room for everyone now. In fact, the way it's gone, it hasn't fallen for the South Africans, who are going to run out of room at the far end of the Portage. And they're going to have to run straight up the slope, a little bit steeper than it is if you run diagonally, obviously. So South Africans made the right move, but the Hungarians changed their process, and it disadvantaged South Africans, but no damage done.
And they've come screaming past the Danes as well. Running
Belcher
it really well.
And Mason looking very, very comfortable. No strain on either face.
And that lays down a marker. Remember, there's only one more Portage to come. Belcher and Mason at the front. They're away first. They're away clean. Are they going to try and make this one stick? Kisley's right on her wave. Shy's with her. The South Africans, this group is going to reform as it is.
The group will reform because the Brits have no intent on breaking this group up. There's nothing in it for them to do that.
So
they'll cruise, and 5 from 5 for the Brits.
Okay, we've got to start joining the dots here. We've got to start projecting one more Portage to come.
For me, the projection's simple. It's going to be the same again. Brits will get in first. They'll lead the last lap, win the burn-in. And the Hungarians have done nothing to stop that. And I think that's a mistake on their part. They've got 2 boats in the race, a little bit of coordination, and they could have tested the Brits. They know Belcher's up to the test, but the only view they've had of Mason was at the Europeans, and she was weak there. And they should have learned from that. She might not be weak here. She's a very different athlete here than she was at the Europeans, but the Hungarians have a duty to test her. They really do. If they're not going to test her, what's the point?
So the balance of power definitely sitting with that blue boat, but if you're in either of those Hungarian boats, you would want to work them over. You've got to strain them. You've got to put them into a position of vulnerability. And there's time running out. It's got to be said. We've got one full lap, one more Portage, and then that 1,000-meter burn, and they've got to start playing a card. Otherwise, it's blue all the way.
Time has run out. It's the last big lap. Nobody's going to put it into Belcher and Mason now because they didn't from the Portage. It's similar to Hank's race yesterday, where it's kind of just going to run out of time for the others to do anything about the boat that's the strongest.
And it goes back to control. And I must admit, Belcher and Mason have looked superb in the way they've managed this race.
Absolutely they have, and their odds of winning are just increased lap after lap after lap. Chase group, still 5 boats. Spain, Czech Republic, Belgium, second Spanish crew, and the Australians, but only 2 at the front of the C2 race. They're passing in front of us. They've got probably almost a minute on Campos and Sanchez. So it's Ferro and Grana versus Kova and Doce.
That's been a bit of a miserable trip for Manuel Campos. I hope he can bolt on a trip to a decent game farm or a game reserve to make it a worthwhile outing.
It's been a miserable trip for Spain as a whole.
But it's Ferro and Grania, 1 boat length ahead of Martin Kova and Adam Dolce.
And here we go. You know, there's just nothing happening in these groups anymore. The Danes aren't motivated to come around the outside. There's no pressure on the front 4. You know, Che is resting with Barra there in the V, but they just haven't got the firepower to come around the Brits at the end. So
they're dawdling up to that top turn can on the final lap. And I got to say, if there's an outside prospect of a South African medal here, this suits them down to the ground.
Absolutely, it does.
It definitely does, and we've seen every single portage, I think, Arthur and Byrne, they actually haven't had a good takeout. They've always been in a compromising position, so they actually haven't had a chance to really flex their legs. So it leaves them in with a shot. But jeepers, being up against these 2 Hungarian boats in an end sprint, it's anyone's game.
Yeah, I'm with you, Anne. I think if the South Africans can get out well on the final portage, and they should have got out well on that one, it was just unlucky that the pattern changed. You're not to know the pattern changes. So I think if they get in 2nd or 3rd, they could be in with a serious chance of a medal.
The Hungarians turning far tighter around that bottom turn can as they come into portage number 5. Exactly the same distance being covered by them, so it's 7 laps with 6 portages. And there's the distance back to that ailing boat of Sanchez and Campos. Race effectively run after that fall-in, putting in at the last portage.
It just hasn't been his weekend. And if anything, their bronze medal is more under threat from the crews behind them, which is the Poles, Bourgil and Gluser, than it is. Yeah, they've lost touch, haven't they, with gold and silver. That's not happening. A little look back there from Sanchez. And I don't think they'll be comfortable with the lead they've got over the Poles. It's a huge lead, but they're moving so badly, these 2 now, that yeah, you'll see the lead they've got here. There's the chase pair. It's probably close to a minute and a half.
Yeah, 2 minutes, I'd say. There was a prize for the best looking boat design. They'd win that. But at the front of the race, this is where the gold medal is going to be decided for 2017. Ferro and Grania keeping Martin Kova and Adam Dolce honest in the Hungarian boat. We know that there's a huge turbo in the back of that Hungarian boat. So from the gold medal in the C2 race, let's go back to this pedestrian group of 5 that is leading the women's K2 race up to the top turn can. And it just adds to the nervous tension before what we know is going to be a burn coming down. Haley Arthur and Mish Byrne have come off the pull at the front down onto the sideway. They should have dropped back onto the diamond, actually. That wasn't available to them. The Danes, where they have been for much of this race, scratching for crumbs at the back. And the balance of power for me still sits in that sky blue boat on the left. Kisley at the front there must look to try and destabilize the setup at the moment. She's doing the work, taking everybody up to the top turn. She's got the guts. There's some speed in that boat. We saw that earlier on. She's got to start making that count as a weapon in that arsenal.
I think Kisley's only hope is to come out of the final portage first. And I think she'd be very, very hard to overtake. That's a well-drilled crew. But it's tough at the back there.
And Shai's getting caught up with the South African boat.
And this is going to be hard for Che. Che is going to have to work, and when she works, there's nowhere for her to go because it's Great Britain she's going to have to take on. And I think if Belcher wants to hold her off, she can. And if I was Belcher, I would do that now. Yeah, your automatic response is to fall into the V and disadvantage the South Africans, but Belcher has an opportunity here to put a few hard yards into Che.
This is going to be a very interesting battle here as Che decides what to do. I don't think she's going to hang on that second wave for very long. She has to challenge Belcher, and Belcher's probably going to try and hold off. So this could be quite a race just for this first wash in the next few meters.
Chase group fragmenting slightly.
Kazushkova putting pedals down on the apex of that turn. Looking at that turn, Ivan, would you make it slightly wider, flatter?
It's so hard. I mean, boats only go around a certain arc. It's to match a set of turn buoys to that arc is very difficult. And you've got limited width on the river as well, so it's so hard.
And you also need to reward the crews that are able to turn that boat tight, that they've got the wherewithal and the boat set up right.
Here we go. We'll come back to that question because Che is taking on Belcher, and Belcher just said no right there. She said no. Che hasn't accepted no just yet.
And Kisley's put her foot down as well.
And there it is. It's over. South Africans will move up behind Kisley again now. Che's going to try and duck in. No, she's not. South
Well
Africans,
done, Hayley Arthur.
Che has been handed it. South Africans caught a little bit for speed there, but they hung on once.
Yeah.
I think they thought that Belcher may take the lead and chose Belcher a little bit too soon, a premature decision. They should have waited until the two tails get level, really, and then start to make your decision. I think Hayley Arthur misjudged it slightly there, but then dealt with her misjudgment brilliantly. She just sat behind the blue boat, moved up to Kisley again, and Che is in trouble.
Well, Kisley and Mahalic were the point scorers out of that little thrust and parry. There's no doubt that they just proved that they've...
Che having to readjust her decision. Barra doesn't know what's happening back there. She's never been... So Che has tried to take on Belcher and Mason and has failed. She's going to come and do exactly the same on the right-hand side of the group now, take on the slightly weaker crew from Denmark. But she's not making a good job of it. She's making almost random decisions now. She hasn't come up to the side of the Danes yet. Barra doesn't know what's happening. I don't think Barra's a great engine in the back if things are going well and Che's out in the front, but she's not an educated back paddler. This doesn't look clever from Barra at all. You see her late on the timing. We haven't seen this ever.
And the decision-making is looking nervy. For such an experience, there's the icon of the sport, just looking unable to back yourself in a situation and having to revert to plan B and C in that jumpy, nervous manner doesn't bode well, I'll be honest.
Yeah, if Che and Barra were strong, they'd be moving already.
I think they're definitely going to go still, though. They're recovering maybe a little bit at the back, but they have to go. They know
Here we go now. You're dead right.
The Danes have been slightly weaker in the bunch, so they'll challenge them, which isn't good for the South African boat as the Danes get squeezed back into the diamond. But yeah, let's see if Jay comes past. But I think they should be able to, and they should come past, and this group is going to reshuffle, and the South Africans are going to have to look sharp.
Well, they haven't come round in one go. They're still out to the side. They've come up to the side of the Danes. Not finished the job in one hit. They're doing a job that could have been done in one go, in two goes, and I think it speaks volumes of how they're feeling.
So that's the shot from the bridge, which means they've done about 800 meters down from the top turn can. This is the last full lap. They've got one more portage to come. So opportunities to try and seize the high ground in this group are now very few and far between.
So Che's got two options here. She can either come and close out the yellow boat of the Danes there fairly soon. They're just to our left, about 100 meters above the bridge now. Or she goes slightly right and goes for the lead and makes the group reform around her. But that's going to be hard work. Anything she does from now is going to cost her.
I think watching how Kisley continued to take the lead after Belcher was challenged on the left just shows that she maybe wants to try and hold this pull until the final portage. So whatever happens on either side of Kisley. I think she's going to challenge and keep trying to hold that lead.
Kisley's in the same position as we saw Hank McGregor in yesterday. She's got the lead. She took the lead at the soft point. A little bit of reshuffle around them while the other paddlers are trying to work out what to do next. The big difference is, though, that McGregor can outrun all the other paddlers in the group at the Portage as well, and I don't think Kisley can. I think Belcher is just too strong on the run. So Belcher is still comfortable there. I'm really surprised that Che's done nothing about her position at this stage. It's got to happen soon. In fact, it's happening now. So whether she leads or whether she goes for the wash is significant. Leading would be her best option, but Kisley says absolutely not. That is not going to happen.
And that's bad news for the South African girls. They've been squeezed right out.
Nervous look for me at Hayley Mason in the back of the blue boat there. I'm just trying to work out how tired she is, but it looks good for the blue boat. It really looks good to me. I'm starting to get nervous already, but this looks as good as it did yesterday from a British point of view.
So one roll of the die from Anata Shade.
I feel a bit for the South Africans here because they've just got to that position at an unfortunate time through no fault of their own.
So coming
Kisley is not giving up this lead, which means the South Africans are going to take the brunt of it all the way to the Portage.
They have the ability to at least eat into this bunch on the Portage, but it does look like they're going to be on the tail of it as they come around to the bottom turn.
If the group stays this shape, and we've seen the Danes upset the British turn at the top turn, that could happen again, and that could throw a bomb into the whole thing here.
Yeah.
But if the group enters this shape, I think Kisley will go long again, like she did last time, because I think she's going to start fighting Che instead of Belcher.
I think Kisley Mihalic feel they've got it the whole way from here. They think they've got the firepower to be able to
I think you're right,
lead from the front the whole way.
I think that is exactly what they're thinking. Kisley knows she can't overtake Belcher once Belcher gets the lead, and she's taking it from here. Now, all eyes for me on the Danes and how well they get around this turn, because that's going to affect the Great Britain crew, and the Danes are doing a good job.
Giving Che something of a nudge.
Che's in
They're
trouble
taking
here.
Che down in the
Che
process.
is in big trouble here.
The Danes.
It's great for the South Africans.
Slingshot inside for the South African crew. Suddenly they're right back in the mix.
But really, that to me is taking it to Kisley and Belcher. There's only 2 boats now in this race. It's such small margins, but so significant. Kisley's in charge, but Belcher knows she runs well. Mason at this stage is never going to let Belcher down. That's a fact. Mason's weak point or vulnerable point could have been the midsection of this race, but from now on, Hayley Mason is going to be one of the strongest paddler in this group. She's going to go for it from now on. Che comes up to try and mitigate the damage, but damage has been done. Let there be no doubt. Che is in trouble. Danes are in trouble, and that's not helping the South Africans at all here. It's a 2-boat race to me.
Well, Che's coming up strongly on the right. So we turn the page, start the final chapter of what has been an absorbing women's K2 race.
50 metres to go, and the tension is building.
Kisley Mihalic, to me, still holding all the cards.
I just feel for the South Africans. This has gone horrible for them in the last 3 or 4 minutes. Like we thought, Kisley going fairly long. I hope the Danes don't impede the Brits. Boats are out. It's Kisley first, throwing her drink system off. But when they get on the flat, it's going to be Belcher running past, I think. Although Kisley is making a great job of this.
No gains being made by that blue boat.
Oh, my word, this isn't how we expected it to pan out.
Kisley Mihalic holding the
Belcher
cards.
struggling. This has changed the nature of this totally. I didn't think that Kisley would have those legs, but she has. And Belcher Mason now having to tough out
and the
the
British
exact
boat.
opposite situation that they had yesterday. And absolutely now Kisley and Mihalic are taking this, and it's all gone.
And it's the Danes in
It's all
third.
gone belly up. The Danes are in third, and they could well finish third. What looked like a certain gold to me for the Brits has gone. Kisley and Mihalic so strong. They've got the lead and they're pulling away, and they are never coming back.
That's 1,000 meters at the front for them before they go and take that gold.
No problem at all.
Brilliantly
for
run
Kisley
by
and
the
Mihalic.
Hungarians.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Yeah, you didn't have that penciled in for that last portage.
I wonder if they've been hiding that. That
Of-
was just
of course they
20%
have.
better
Of
than
course they
anything else
have.
they've done all day.
We're actually stupid for not noticing because he raced exactly like that yesterday. She didn't show her cards until very late in the race and then threw it down when it counted, and she's done exactly the same thing today. She's been there and thereabouts and being strong, but yeah, she's showing her dominance.
But this is where, I mean, they did this from the second portage where they strung the group out a bit and the group was struggling. And the nature of this race has just changed completely. Maybe heart overhead, I saw too much strength in the blue boat from Great Britain. But now, yeah, it's game on. Yeah, we're fighting for medals now.
Well, again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about Kisley and Mihalic, and it's mostly Kisley, I suspect, in that boat who's been doing the management of this race. The execution of the game plan has been superb. She's just kept that hidden card at the bottom of the deck, hauled it out at the right time, played it, and it's suddenly hammered out that 40-50 meter lead that they're enjoying at the moment. So it's a canter up. There's the turn cans on the short turn in front of them. They'll go around those 5 boys. They're going flat out at the moment, as they would do, but when they come around those boys, they'll have the luxury of seeing, and there's a resignation there. There's no real effort to try and catch them.
There's fatigue there, not just resignation. There's genuine fatigue. I'd virtually got my tracksuit top on for the presentation here, and I was up for it all over again. But fantastic from Kisley, absolutely fantastic. You can see how sharp that turn is. The K2s just can't get round it.
And it's the danger, the surprise boat here. They appeared to
absolutely.
be struggling early on, but they actually came out of that portage strong, and they're still.
Belcher done well to
hanging
go
on to
inside
second.
them, and it's going to be Che. Che is going to be miles ahead, absolutely streets ahead, and the Brits have just lost their medal because the Danes are going to get onto the side of Che, and it's going to be no medal for the Brits here. They look like they had it under control for so long, and it's a nightmare for Belcher and Mason. It really is. They're going to have to work so hard. Che's picked a medal from nothing.
Well, the Brits are coming back.
The
Brits are coming back on the inside, trying to get onto the right of
something. They've got to pick something out of this. But you would not have had the result or the picture coming down the last 500 metre looking like this at all. Belcher's coming wide on Che now. There's still a chance of a medal for Great Britain, but gold to Hungary.
Vanda Kisley, Sarah Mihalic cantering away. Pulled the trigger at the right time, played their card on the portage. It gave them the gap at the put-in, and they have just bulleted away from the rest of the pack. It's going to be a spectacular gold for Hungary, but there are 3 boats sitting together, and that's silver and bronze.
This is gold, and an emphatic gold at that. Beautifully planned by the Hungarians. Kisley obviously had control of the group.
Well, Vanda Kisley, the heir apparent in Hungarian women's canoeing, has just stepped up a notch.
This is tough. The way to deal with this, I think, is to sit back on the wash, wait for the first attack, and go second.
But the crowd here at Camps Drift rises
in the
as
background,
one.
Belcher and Mason are taking on Che, but they haven't got it. It's Che all the way to the finish, but Kisley wins.
Kisley Mihalic are going to win by 40 or 50 meters. Here's the race for silver.
Vanda Kisley, what a weekend for her. It's going to be Che takes the silver. I'm really happy for her that she's come out of this with a medal. And Belcher Mason third. Great result for them. They would have taken that before the race. I really hope they could have come up with another goal, but it wasn't to be today. Kisley was too strong, and the Danes in 4th place. Huge cheer for the South Africans. They've done a great job, Arthur and Byrne out there today. And it could have been different for them. The last little run into the final portage just didn't play to them, and it was by no means their fault.
They're not unhappy with that. They barked with the big dogs today. They would have learned chunks from that, and I think it's been an absolutely top outing for the South African pair.
fatigue, exhaustion there from the Great Britain crew. They'll be happy with the medal. Absolutely they will. There's the 3 medalists. But they did nothing wrong all day. They just ran out of juice on the last little bit. They didn't have what it took on the last portage to overhaul the Hungarians. And a great job from all 3 crews.
And look at Renata Che there. She's happy. She's in a good place at the moment.
Very much so. Yeah, I think that's based on the fact that her partner was confused by what was happening out there, and Che felt that it could be a repeat of yesterday, and she might not even make the finish. Yeah. So to pull a silver from a potential 5th place, I think, is a relief to her.
Well, she's taking a team view. You saw her gesturing those 2 fingers, so they've claimed a 1-2. Great for the team. And now we're coming into the Portage now. This is going to decide gold in the men's C2 race. Grania and Ferro first into the Portage, as they have been all morning. Corver and Dolce just behind them.
Spaniards out well. Not since Copenhagen have the Spaniards beaten the Hungarians, or this Spanish crew at least. They won in Copenhagen and Rome, Ferro and Grana, but it's been all Hungary since then. And now we know that Ferro and Grana are dealing with the turns way better than the Hungarians, and the last turn is very, very tight.
And it's Ferro and Grania who get away first, but that yellow Hungarian C2 is right with them. This is going to be a nervy 1,000 meters.
I think if the Spaniards have the Hungarians on their outside, they're going to gain 3, maybe 4 lengths around the turn. Hungarians may try and come on the inside, but it doesn't look like they're going to. During that portage, there are a few more finishes in the women's K2. After the South Africans, I think it was the Czechs, and then the Belgians, then the Spaniards, 2 Spanish crews.
But it's all eyes on these 2, I'm afraid.
The C2 taking it very easy up to the top turn, because they know that the crucial part is the turn and the gap they can make on the Hungarians. I think if it comes down to a 100-meter sprint, probably the Hungarians will be favoured.
So the trick here, I suspect, is just keep them on the outside.
I don't know how easy it is to do in a C2, to be fair, but if you're K2, you would approach the turn very direct.
So these are special
turn
moments.
late, and the outside crew would be in all sorts of trouble. Kisley, look at that, pure joy. Mihalic already wins gold in the under 21, under 23s, and now a 2nd gold in senior to add to that. Phenomenal result. 3rd last year for Mihalic, behind Che and the South Africans, and a promotion to 1st this year. So if I were Ferro and Grana, I would come into the turn late, turn sharp, and the Hungarians would be in all sorts of trouble. Leverett and Ahrens there. Not sure on the positionings. We've lost touch a little bit while we were concentrating on the C2, but they had a really good race, the Australians, today. And next across the line will be Jenna Ward and Russell.
Jen and Nix, really 2 great mates.
Here's the turn for the C2. Around go Ferro and Grana.
Bauerada going around the boys to keep it tight.
Both crews handling this really well, but it's about now where the difference will show. See the difference in angles. The Hungarians are still pointing at the bank. The Spanish are already lined up, and it's going to be 4 lengths, I think, by the time the Hungarians straighten up. And away go Ferro and Grana. Not as much as 4, it's 3 lengths. Maybe only 2. The Hungarians have done amazingly well to deal with a turn like that. Coming past some back markers who I hope will step aside while this race pans out.
Well, Cobra and Dolce bounced back brilliantly from that.
It's so hard, though, to overtake in a C2 because the back man, instead of applying power, which you'd need him to do, has to chip in the steering strokes, and it just weakens the offering you've got. So to overtake is a big, big ask for the Hungarians at this stage. So Ferro and Grana, all they need to do is keep the Hungarians
And here they come, actually.
close to them.
Kova and Doce looking for clean water on the side.
You can
We
see
know
Doce in the back of that Hungarian boat having to do so much steering, sweeping wide to keep the front of the boat out. And Ferro and Grana, provided they keep moving on to them, it will make it very, very hard.
And they're in a distant third at this stage, but
the race is on. Here it is. The Hungarians have got some clear water to the right there, so it's going to be very, very tight. They're going to go one either side of the pillar. And I think it's going to be the Hungarians come out of the pillar first. This is so, so tight. They are neck and neck. Spaniards have a couple of feet, but no, the Hungarians now maybe inching ahead. It's Hungary from Spain. The power of Kova they've gained, and it's paddles down for
and
Ferro.
they've done it.
He's done.
They've killed him in the end sprint. Martin
They gave
Kova.
it their best shot. Ferro gave it his all. They did everything right, the Spaniards, but the Hungarians too strong. It's going to be 2 Hungarian national anthems to wade through in the prize giving.
Martin Kova and Adam Doce absolutely
Kudos
explosive.
to Kova and Doce. They moved left. They gave themselves clear water. Doce was able to apply the power. Kova always has the strength to overtake if he's got clear water. And it was clinical. The bridge arch helped them as well. They just had that separation for a moment, and it was all they needed. 3rd place goes to Campos and Sanchez. But that was an awesome finish from the Hungarians.
Absolute knockout punch from Martin Kova and Adam Doce there. Magnificent
We have
from
been
the
treated yet
Hungarians.
again to a huge morning of racing. And what fun
Great
it's been.
camaraderie on the water as well.
How many times have these 2 crews raced each other?
But it has put Spain back on the map this year.
It's what the Spanish needed, to be fair. This crew would have hoped to be a lot closer than they are. They had that swim at the Portage. It cost dearly, and they never really got back into it. It looks like Campos just hasn't got the power that he's had in the past.
So another goal to Hungary. It's going to be silver and bronze going the way of Spain, as Manuel Campos and Jose Sanchez bring their C2 down to the line to claim 3rd place and the last spot on the podium for Spain.
So Spain 2 and 3. Just about saving face in the closing stages. They've still got a very, very strong K2 to come this afternoon for Spain.
Remember, this race molded by the dramatic swim for Campos and Sanchez on the penultimate Portage, but down to the line for the bronze medal, Manuel Campos, Jose Sanchez.
There's gesturing, there's tension there between the 2 Spanish crews. And Stott clearly hasn't got my conspiracy theory mind, because he pointed out the obvious there, actually, that probably they were just asking what the result was at the front of that race.
The balance of the women's K2s. What is
Oh
Sunday?
my
I
word,
guess?
does it get better than that?
Straight out of church, down to support the world champs.
Gospel choir down on the riverbank.
For those struggling to find solutions to the worries plaguing their boats, a little bit of divine intervention coming in from the bank. That's on the drift side, just below where the
I
chill
think they're
zone
on the
is
same
set up.
side of the river as
Yeah.
us, just down from the athlete chill zone, maybe. Tough day out
the
for Lane
Norwegians.
and Broughton. They closed down a few places after their swim. Sletjo and Spikland from Norway just behind them. It wasn't the day out that the Brits needed, but
Meanwhile,
they stuck to the task.
Meanwhile, the Polish C2 crew of Patrick Gluzer and Matthias Borgil coming down to the line. But wow, what a great morning of racing! And just look at the landscape. Look at the landscape of Hungarian canoeing as well. And we keep seeing this ongoing, and it's an ongoing process. There's never a finite place you get to at any stage. There's always an ongoing shifting of the landscape and an evolution. But
yeah, a lot of the other countries, you have dominant characters. Yeah, it's the same for our team through the generation I was in. It's the same for the Spaniards with Busto and Alonso and Merchan. They have that dominant group, and then there's a void behind them, and there's a period of a down period. In the Hungarians, it doesn't happen because they've got the under-23 world champion, they've got the junior world champion coming through, and the feed through is constant. There's the results in the women's K2. Hungary finishing the weekend as they started, with Hungary 1-2 in so many of the events. Belcher and Mason picking up a well-deserved bronze medal, but the Danes, I think, will be super happy with 4th place in that.
I think 4 and 5 are both stories of great heart and courage. They both slugged their way in and maybe punched a little bit above their weight. I think they can both be extremely happy to be on the front bunch.
The 20-second gap you see there between 4th and 5th is meaningless. Those South Africans could so easily have been in 4th place had the group shape not panned out to their disadvantage in the last few minutes before the portage. They did everything right. They covered everything. Kudos to them for making the best of what they had on offer.
So still a couple of C2 boats out on the course. It's the nature of a game that this field gets very strung out as the poles come into the landing to take their boats out, the end of their boat. It's the Colombian crew in the white boat with the white shirts. Alejandro Rodriguez, Felipe Sanes Colazos.
And coming down to the finish in front of us, Brzezina and DeLuey from the Czech Republic. Lost track of the actual finishing positions, but they're about 6th place, I think.
Well, the stands are packed here at Kampsdrift because I guess the final blue ribbon event of the championships is now just around the corner. Huge expectations from the hometown fans, but it's going to be a cracker of a race, and it's a race that is loaded with potential gold medalists. Yeah, so what a great Sunday afternoon's entertainment in store.
I tell you what, it's more exciting than that because you've got all the big crews in there, and at this stage you can't choose between them. You might everyone will have a different opinion, but to me what's more significant, you've got a French crew in there that they've got the capability to be in the front group, but they're unpredictable. They behave unpredictably, and that just ruins the momentum and the organisation of the group, and it can throw someone a curveball when they least expect it, and you saw it a couple of times already this weekend. Unpredictability causes splits in the group, and the French kind of destroyed the group in the final portage last year.
Right, let's go down to Doug Bird, who's in the Portage area, catch up with some of the athletes that have just come off the water.
Got 2 very happy South Africans here with me. They had a valiant race today, finishing 5th. Michelle and Haley, what a performance from you two. Michelle, you're in the back of the boat having to deliver the power there.
Yeah, sure. The first 2 laps were quite brutal. We felt like we were constantly just fighting for a spot to get there. It was quite tough. So, after the first portage, we actually fell off the front bunch, and luckily us and both the Denmark girls were together, and we worked so hard to get back onto the front bunch. So I was so stoked to have been able to do that. And then, it luckily settled down a bit, and we tried to get a couple diamonds. So it did help, but I think we were just so tired by the end, and those girls were just way too strong.
Now, there was an excellent execution as well from a tactical point of view, which is trying to trick you to train at that level, particularly in South Africa, but you juked it out with the best in the world today. You've got to be very happy with that.
Yeah, I think we are pretty chuffed. We've probably got things like the McGregor Series to thank for that. Whenever we went into those races, the goal was to try and mix it with the guys to sort of simulate what it would be like to constantly have to catch up, to constantly have to interval. I think a lot of people, the advice we were given, especially after watching the last 2 days racing, was just to try to be patient and smart. And that was hard for me to do because I think I always try to be aggressive. Today we tried to always find a wave and rather hold back. I think we knew quite soon in the race, like Michelle said, that the others might sort of outmuscle us. So that was probably our best tactic, and I guess it got us to 500 meters from the finish. So we weren't completely wrong. So I think for the most part, a medal would be amazing, but I don't think we're getting much happier than we are.
Well, I can agree with that, but it's also, I mean, you know, next year you guys are another year of experience in racing in the bank. This is a long-term project. You don't just roll in and take medals. You're racing against Pedigree's crews. Are we going to see this combination going forward together?
Yeah, Flip, Hayley is so powerful. It's been such a nice combination to be with her. And yeah, we're definitely going to mix it up in the surf ski as well. So I think it will be an awesome combo.
Fantastic. Well done to you. 5th place here for South Africa today. Back to you guys, Dave.
Promise you, just putting a little warning out to any other girls' crews out there, you don't want to take them on in a surf ski because you're going to get taught a lesson properly. Both of them superb in a surf ski.
That was a great interview, and we've got more interviews to come, but she just explained that she went against her natural instinct to be aggressive, and it's quite hard to hold back when you're racing a race in a way that isn't your default state. So that makes it even better for me.
Well, let's go down and put those cans on because Lonnie Belcher and Hayley Mason are standing by with Doug Bird.
Yeah, and they're very, very stoked, but they also look a little bit tired. 26 Ks in the boat for you yesterday, another 26 today. That's some heavy racing.
Yeah, I'm feeling it now.
So tell us, gold medal last night. You, of course, had to settle things down after all that hype and excitement because you knew you had another very hard race today. Talk us through it.
Yeah, today was similar to yesterday in the respect that there was a big group for most of the race. I knew that we had a strong sprint, so we just had to conserve as much energy on the washers and then see what we could do at the end. So we're very happy to get a medal, but obviously we would have liked it to be a bit higher.
Hey man, you got to take what you can get out there. It was brutal racing, and I must say, there were parts where it looked fairly settled, but I'd say for 60-70% of the race, things were constantly moving. You're never really at ease.
No, we felt pretty comfy for most of it, but on the portages, obviously, we were feeling good, and on the water, it felt good. It was just chopping and changing a bit, but we always seem to have a good wash, and Lani always gets us in the right place, so I trust her to get us in the right place.
Well, you could absolutely say that, and is that your clear strategy? I guess it works well for you, being dominant on the pull and commanding the bunches where you want to be. At any point today, did you guys feel under any real pressure?
No. We've done so much practice back at home with the guys we train with on the washers, and Sam and Nikki. Sam's out here, and one of our training partners. We've got them in K2, and we just try and chop and change with them. So that was perfect practice for being out there.
Well, excellent work to the both of you. Another medal for Great Britain. Another one for you. Your first of the weekend. Good job. Time for the after party, I guess.
Bring it on.
There you go. Back to you guys, Dave.
That sounds ominous, really laying down a marker when it comes to...
You have no idea how ominous. Hayley Mason and after parties. Yeah, you don't want to know.
The Funky Pants after party in the so-called forbidden zone. I think time is rapidly coming where we're going to blow the lid off where this hidden forbidden zone is, but sounds like the British girls are going to be first at the door to get in.
There's confirmation of the men's C2 result. Kova and Doce 15 seconds ahead of Ferrer and Grana, which really doesn't tell the story. That was decided where inches counted in that race, and it was just Ferrer knew he was beaten with about 100 meters to go and just paddled into the end. A great race there in the C2. Not the big day Campos and Sanchez were hoping for, but there's always next year.
Yeah, Ferro and Grania just walked into an absolute sucker punch from Cobra and Dolce in that final 200 meters. Floyd Mayweather would have been super chuffed with that one. Beautiful to watch in its execution. Just listening back to the two girls' interviews, it goes back to training. Both of those girls are training in guys' squads, and it's making them so streetwise.
I was thinking exactly the same. They both said exactly the same things. We train with the guys at home, and it's that learning to deal with what you're given, rather than a crew that trains on its own and is so used to being in control of itself. You saw it today. Usually Che and Barra are out at the front and they look supreme, but Barra was confused today. She was at the back of that group. Che was making decisions that Barra had no idea what was happening. She was out of time. She was making unilateral decisions in the back about where she wanted to go. It was only a couple of strokes later she was getting in line with Che, and that's because maybe they don't get challenged at home. Maybe they don't train with a group where they have to mix it, because she was clearly out of her comfort zone today.
Van der Kisley, the strategist. We saw Hank McGregor delivering a masterclass in strategy in the second half of the race. Van der Kisley gets an almost perfect scorecard there. In fact, Doug Bird is down there with the winners, so let's go and catch up with him now.
Sure, what a race it was indeed for Vanda and Sarah. It is a great week for the both of you as well. You're walking away with lots of medals.
Yeah, thank you. We both did great in K1, so we were very relaxed and calm, and I think that's why we could race that great. And not to mention that Wanda is so professional. I really have nothing to do because she's the brain, and I just focused on giving the power and the strength into the boat, and she did everything else.
Well, that last 1,000 meters, we were sitting up there, myself and Stefan, looking on the screen, the power that you were delivering. Vanda, could you feel it coming from the back, the power?
Yeah, of course. That was so much power. Yeah, so thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, but just a really powerful performance from you today. On the last portage, though, it looked as though you decided, you know, this is where we've got to go.
Yeah, we need to run as hard as we can because the other girls were fast as well. So we need to go faster, yeah.
Well, it's another medal for Hungary. I'm sure there's going to be great celebration for the whole team this evening.
Yeah, especially for us. I think, yeah, we are very happy.
Fantastic. Well, there we go, folks. Your gold medalists for the ladies K2 world champions. Well done. Back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Doug. Vanda Kisley is an absolute ball of fire, but...
Dave, yeah, we were just talking before that about confusion in the back paddler, and she said it herself there. She pointed to Vanda and said, she is the brain. All I do is apply the power and give the strength when she needs it. And that wasn't a decision that we saw from Barra in the back of Che's boat. Barra had started to make her own decisions. And the whole boat just falls apart then. And they did very well, to be fair, to recover from what they were doing in the latter stages of that to get a silver medal. So, yeah, you see the difference. That is a quality back paddler right there.
And it's trust as well. The word trust came up. She just said, you're the general, I just provide the power. And that's where the great combinations come from.
And that's what you need when you're the paddler in the front. You need to know that whatever you do, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, that your backman is 100% committed to doing what you want them to do.
Well, the queue into the after party, it sounds like it's going to be a bit of a jockeying between the British girls and the Hungarian girls, but there's a great vibe here. We wrap up the morning session on the final day of the Marathon Worlds here at Camps Drift. Let's soak up some of the sights and sounds that have entertained the crowd here on this Sunday's Racing Session 1. We'll be back for the men's K2 race, which is going to be at 2 o'clock start, so 1:45. Catch you back in front of your computer for live stream and the final session. So some of the fantastic views and sights and sounds, and there's the South African crew getting some pretty expert second. There's Jenna being seconded by her brother Jason. Good job there. Final race is going to be starting at 12, so the final live stream kicks in at 11:45. I'm sure the Campos team is not going to want to revisit these videos, but it's all added drama, and we've had so much drama. We've seen athletic excellence, we've seen emotional drama, we've seen it all at Camps Drift, and we look forward to catching up with you once again. 11:45, that's about 20 minutes time for the final live stream of the day.